And welcome into Hoopsville, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful evening. It was a crazy weekend of Division III basketball tournament action. We will cover it all for you on the show tonight. We hope you're enjoying it. Hope you're enjoying the tournament. It has been terrific, to say the least, and we have plenty to talk about for the next 2 hours here on Hoopsville. A reminder to socialize with us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville on your Twitter account. You can also join us via email, hoopsville at d3hoops.com. Also on Facebook at facebook.com/Hoopsville. That's how you interact with us. We certainly would appreciate any questions that you may have for us or our guests, so please don't shy away, as it were. Plenty to talk about for the next 2 hours. We'll talk about teams who made it into the tournament or continue to be dancing in the tournament. We'll also talk about those who just missed out, some of the big upsets throughout Division III as well. We'll talk to some of the teams who either pulled off those upsets or survived. We'll talk about a few of those here tonight. 3 men's teams, 3 women's teams slated. We'll also have some interviews for those who we don't have on the air, but we were able to get interviews. Forgive the camera. It's not in a good mood tonight. Also, may even hear from our good friend Gordon Mann later in the program as well. So lots to talk about, to say the least, in Division III basketball. I got a chance to be in Virginia for a set of games. I was down at Virginia Wesleyan for the Friday night set. Those games featured Alvernia versus... who did they play? Alvernia played Wesley, obviously, and Virginia Wesleyan played Johns Hopkins. Interestingly enough, both games, as much as some of their fans thought their games were in hand, both teams nearly blew their leads. It was rather interesting to watch it kind of play out, as it were. Wesley had a big lead that Alvernia chipped into. They were leading by 13, but like a minute and a half, 2 minutes left. Alvernia chipped into that, got within about 5 or so before that game, before Wesley finally hit some free throws to ice that game. On the Virginia Wesleyan side of things, they seem to have been up easily on Johns Hopkins. Despite shooting 55% in the second half for the Marlins, Johns Hopkins started the second half 13 of 17 and continued to chip away at that game. Made that a couple possession ball game with just 30 seconds left. But then free throws helped the Marlins, and a couple missed opportunities and turnovers allowed them to end up winning by 12. That score not indicative of how tight it was late in the game. Wasn't there for the second round game, but that looked like a good one. Wesley made a few runs at him, but the Marlins able to hold on despite losing the lead late in the second half, went on to win. So Virginia Wesleyan on to the Sweet 16 sectional semis coming up. I also went up to Randolph-Macon on Saturday to watch DeSales versus Mary Washington. DeSales with the overtime upset victory of Randolph-Macon. DeSales going with a clog the lane defense, dare you to shoot it outside defense that worked against Randolph-Macon. Of course, Macon hitting a 3 late in the game to force the overtime, but DeSales got an open look at it, practically an open layup at the end of regulation. They couldn't get the fall, but then DeSales took the lead in the overtime, went on to win by 6. Mary Washington, on the other hand, easily handled Springfield and then easily handled DeSales, beating Springfield by 20 and then beating DeSales by 28, leading by as many as 30-plus in the DeSales game. DeSales actually got up 8-6 with 17:30 left. They scored 7 more points in that first half, while Mary Washington exploded, and it was all over. I think the key there for Mary Washington was the officials allowed some contact, and that allowed that aggressive defense for the Eagles to really hamper DeSales. DeSales also came out with an interesting defense themselves, putting their big guy on Mary Washington's guard with the mentality of, I dare you to shoot it. Well, he hit the first 2 threes in back-to-back possessions, and that quickly changed the defense for DeSales. So, interesting scenario to say the least. In that one, and we will. And really, what was more interesting is I heard rumor that DeSales had gotten some scouting reports about Mary Washington, and the report was they only play zone defense. That is not the case. Mary Washington is very much a man-to-man defense, with certainly happy to go to zone. So DeSales kind of gotten into a corner with Mary Washington, who just absolutely handled them. We'll actually hear from Mary Washington's men's basketball coach and their starting point guard, Dom Moreau, coming up on the show today. But it'll be Virginia Wesleyan versus Mary Washington. Of course, the other side of it is Albertus Magnus versus Williams. Those 4 teams will go to Mary Washington, thanks in part to the fact that Williams and Virginia Wesleyan are more than 500 miles apart, 537 to be exact. And while Virginia Wesleyan would probably take a bus for that trip, it goes down as a flight in the eyes of the NCAA, because if Virginia Wesleyan were to change their minds or decide to elect for it as much as they tend to bus, that is a flight. So that is a bus trip to Fredericksburg, Virginia. Those games on Friday and Saturday. Again, at Mary Washington. Mary Washington, I don't believe, has hosted. They have not hosted an NCAA tournament game in their new facilities, new being the operative word. They've been built for a few years. So this will be a great opportunity for those new facilities to be tested on the men's side. They have hosted in the women's side, just not the men. That's the lower right. The upper right, Amherst survived a scare against York and defeated them by 12. Plattsburgh State defeated MIT, and then Eastern Connecticut to advance on to take on Amherst. Richard Stockton got the big win over Cabrini. Cabrini had handled Bridgewater State on Friday night 100-69. Their starting 5 scoring something like 8, or Cabrini as a whole scoring like 83 points in 27 minutes or something. But Richard Stockton came in with a great defense, certainly, and certainly wasn't afraid of the Cavaliers. And for the first time in 5 years, an away team has won at Cabrini, and Richard Stockton getting that win 85-76. They will take on the winner, or they will take on Morrisville State. Morrisville State once again dancing with the Cinderella Slippers, defeating Brockport State 83-80 in triple overtime. Brockport got multiple looks to try and tie that game late and could not get them to fall. Then Morrisville State went and beat Hobart, and that's a significant win. So Morrisville State, who got all the way to this round of the NCAA tournament last year before losing to St. Mary's, will take on Richard Stockton. All of those games will be at Amherst. Also, Emory defeated Center. That was a nip-and-tuck basketball game. They will take on Stevens Point, who had a semi-challenging weekend, to say the least. Surviving against Marion. Marion had a very good look at a game-winning 3 in the corner, bounced off the iron, then battled against Central. So Stevens Point moving on. Texas Dallas defeated Chapman 85-70 before running into Whitworth, and in a thrilling overtime game, Texas Dallas wins on a buzzer beater. We'll show that to you in a minute. Whitewater defeated Northwestern easily, and then had a surprisingly easy win against Augustana, who had beaten St. Thomas. So Whitewater moves on, and so it'll be Emory, Stevens Point, and Texas Dallas Whitewater all at Stevens Point. Dickinson, the other glass slippers, as it were, only because they defeated Worcester at Worcester. I had them winning against Geneseo State, but Worcester at home is always a tough win. And as somebody pointed out, and we maybe hasn't been a real selling and big topic of conversation, Worcester once again not performing in the NCAA tournament and coming up short, not meeting expectations by the longest of shots. Worcester loses to Dickinson 67-64. Dickinson will take on Wheaton, and Wheaton at Hope defeated Rolls-Holman, and then Penn State Barron. Penn State Barron with the overtime win over host Hope 70-66. So it'll be Dickinson versus Wheaton. Of course, Wash U easily handled Wilmington in a Cabrini-type score, 100-69, but then lost to Calvin. Calvin defeated Wittenberg and then defeated Wash U. We'll talk to Calvin's men's basketball coach coming up here on the show. Should also go back and mention we'll talk to Texas Dallas's head coach as well. And Calvin will face off against Illinois Wesleyan, who also had to withstand a scare against Webster, winning 71-70. Then St. Norbert defeated Ohio Wesleyan, and then those two teams faced off in a more lopsided game than I ever anticipated, Illinois Wesleyan moving on. So it'll be Dickinson versus Wheaton, Calvin versus Illinois Wesleyan, all those games at the Shirk Center in Illinois Wesleyan. Quickly on the women's side, we'll talk more about it. Montclair State will take on Scranton. Baldwin Wallace against FDU Florham. Tufts versus Castleton State. Ithaca versus Amherst. Should mention the previous four I mentioned will be in Madison, New Jersey at Montclair State. No. One of them, I actually blank there. It's Montclair State or Florham. I don't remember. Tufts versus Castleton, Ithaca versus Amherst. Those will be at Tufts in Medford, Mass. Oshkosh versus Whitewater, Carthage versus DePaul in Greencastle, Indiana at DePaul. And then it's Texas Tyler versus Thomas More, Christopher Newport versus Whitman, all in Walla Walla, Washington, all at Whitman. Hats off to the committee on that one, in my opinion. I think that's terrific. I don't want to get too far before we show you the two buzzer beaters, one for Tufts and one for Texas Dallas. We'll start with the Tufts and then go on to the Texas Dallas. These were thrilling ones. The Tufts one will just be Nat Call, and then the Dallas one, we actually have the radio call. So sit back and enjoy two buzzer beaters that got us two teams moving on in the NCAA tournament last night.
Missing 10 free throws. McConnell hitting some big threes. Whitworth playing marvelous defense. It's a good club, Whitworth. They'll face Wisconsin-Whitewater. If they hang on, the winner will meet Wisconsin-Whitewater next Saturday or Friday. And this is the free throw. So 6 seconds left. They can tie it or win it. Smith, Harvey pops the three, top of the key, hits it! They win at the buzzer! Oh my, I don't believe it! They're on the court, they win by one! 78-77! Unbelievable! Unfriggin' believable! Oh my Lord!
So that's how those two games ended. Thrilling fashion, to say the least, in a thrilling weekend full of upsets. Plenty to talk about all of those results. Thanks to our friend Frank Rossi paying attention, helping me out there. FDU Florham on the women's side will be the host at Madison, New Jersey, featuring Montclair State and others. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we will talk about some of those tap dancing upsets, as it were, as Calvin's men's basketball coach Kevin Vanderstreek will come on the show. We will talk to him about the thrilling nature of some of those victories and, of course, how his team was able to advance and move on, including a big win last night against WashU. That interview, along with more, coming up here on Hoopsville. If you'd like to interact with us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us at hoopsville@d3hoops.com and Facebook us at facebook.com/Hoopsville. Of course, Hoopsville presented by D3Hoops.com and the National Association of Basketball Coaches. Appreciate their support as well. Calvin men's basketball coach Kevin Vanderstreek joins us on Hoopsville. Coming up next.
Something I discovered in myself is that if I have a goal, then I can accomplish it.
It's a well-rounded experience.
At a Division III school, you primarily a student athlete, so the school is really shaped around you developing yourself as a complete individual.
It helps a lot that you have a family with your team that can guide you.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor's Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Every season starts with hope and a dream to play for the ultimate title, to become NCAA national champions. And you can experience it live at the 2014 NCAA Division III Men's Basketball Championship, March 21st and 22nd in Salem, Virginia, hosted by the Old Dominion Athletic Conference and the City of Salem. Affordable tickets now available. Visit ncaa.com/tickets today and make a date with champions.
I know sports is important, but having the academic part along with it is a big plus.
I've discovered in myself, a newfound ability to overcome adversity at all different angles. At a Division III school is really shaped around you developing yourself as a complete individual. The end result in my mind is you just become a very well-rounded person.
Before I came into college, I didn't really think I'd be able to balance so much. It helps a lot that you have a family with your team that can guide you.
With a D3 school, there's a lot of time for other opportunities. The coaches expect a lot of you during soccer, but after soccer, that's your own personal time to really find out who you are and other opportunities that you can pursue.
By balancing all of my interests, basketball, my leadership skills, and academics, I'm able to better prioritize my life and to manage it.
Welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you're enjoying our show tonight. As we are getting ready to, or we're really recapping much of what happened over the weekend. Plenty of upsets, plenty of surprises, etc., etc. So if you've got questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Make sure you email us, hoopsville at d3hoops.com, or you can join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Hoopsville. One of the teams that certainly got plenty of attention, the way they have finished the season, and more importantly, how they are now walking their way through the NCAA tournament, is the Calvin Knights. They got, not only did they upset, quote unquote, upset Hope in the conference championship game, they went on and beat Wittenberg this weekend, and then beat host Wash U 83-75 to punch a ticket to the sectional rounds of the NCAA tournament. And joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline, presented by the Division III Men's Basketball Championships in Salem, Virginia, is Coach Kevin Vanderstreek from Calvin. Coach, welcome to Hoopsville.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for coming on. I think what many people may be surprised by is you guys lost 2 out of 3 back in November. You lost 2 out of 3 right around the year switching over. Hope beat you, and then Hope unceremoniously punted you guys in February. You kind of disappeared off of a lot of people's radars. But after that Hope loss, you haven't lost. You guys have won 9 in a row now, including 2 this weekend. You guys seem to be maybe back on all cylinders, as it were.
Well, we sure have played well as of late. I'm very proud of our guys. We had a really nice team last year, and like everyone else, you graduate good players. We had 2 first-team all-conference guys and a couple all-region guys, and we lost those on the perimeter, and so we were rebuilding a little bit on the perimeter. 2 guys had very good games last night, Austin Parks, Jordan Daly, our sophomores, who played primarily JV last year, didn't really get any varsity minutes, and so it took a little time for those guys to come around a little bit, but they've worked really hard and shown a lot of mental toughness, and we've figured out a way to gel with the returners and are playing pretty well right now.
Got matched up with Wittenberg in the first round at Wash U. You beat them 66-51. Then you defeated the home-standing Wash U Bears 83-75. What was the secret in those 2 games to how well you guys ended up playing?
Well, I think defensively we were really good. We had great energy both nights and put a lot of ball pressure on, forced both teams probably into a few more turnovers than they would have liked, and maybe more turnovers than we have forced this year, which is probably not a good thing, but it's come around at the right time, I guess. And offensively, we're a really unselfish team. We're different than last year. Last year, those two guys were really talented individual players, and this group, and it's not like last year's group was selfish. I don't mean to say that at all, because they certainly were not. But you could go to an individual and say, here, get us a basket, where this year it isn't quite like that. It's much more of a ball reversal, in and out, find the open man. If a team takes away this person, somebody else is there, and our guys trust each other, make the extra pass, and as of late, a variety of guys have stepped up, but certainly Tyler Cruz and Jordan Brink have been the consistent leaders on the offensive end.
Yeah, this team now 34-19 overall in NCAA tournament play. Of course, you guys 16-6 under you specifically, and advancing on to the fourth time in the round of 16. Thanks all to your SID, Jeff Phoebus, for that information. It's interesting how you guys had a lot of hoopla at the beginning of the season. You kind of run into some rough stretches, and people kind of, maybe got dismissive. Even I was kind of unsure of what to expect from you guys. And now you seem to be playing really well. You talk about the defense, but you shot 50% against Wittenberg. You shot 52% against Wash U while holding both teams, Wittenberg 35% and Wash U 41%. So while the defense is playing well, Coach, it really looks like this offense is peaking at just the right time.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I can't argue with you there. I think, again, part of that is, you have returners, but you have returners in different roles than they were a year ago. And early on, we played some really good basketball. We beat Wheaton handily, but lost to Carthage. And, we beat Redlands, lost to Claremont Mud Scripps. We lost to Cornerstone, who's an NAI power, and we beat Aquinas on the next day. And I think some of that was just kind of figuring out, how different teams played and how each of us play and how we fit together, what were good shots for us. And it seems to have worked itself out.
Talking to Kevin Vanderstreek, men's basketball coach at Calvin. Team, again, defeating Wittenberg and Wash U to move on to the sectional round. You'll take on Illinois Wesleyan in the next round. Games at Shirk Center in Bloomington, Illinois. What's fascinating to me is that how storied Illinois Wesleyan is and how storied Calvin is as programs. This is the first time these two programs will ever meet.
I know, that's one of the really fun things for me about the NCAA tournament. Calvin and Wittenberg have a little bit of history, but this is my 18th year, and I've never played against Wittenberg. And Wash U and Calvin have a little bit of history in some other sports, volleyball in particular, but we've only played them one time in my 18 years. And so you hear a lot about these coaches and their programs and how great they are, and they are, and they're class outfits, and it's just really fun to play some different teams. And I'm certainly not looking forward to playing Illinois Wesleyan or anything, because I know how good they are. But you look around, you say, okay, would you like to go to Amherst, or would you like to go to Stevens Point or Whitewater? No, I really don't want to play any of those people.
Yeah, at this point in time.
But that everyone's good, and we're just happy to be in the tournament. And I've said to a lot of people, in 2000 when we won the national title, the first pod that we were in had the number 1, 2, and 4 teams in the country in it, and that's how it is in Division III. It's by geography, and in the Great Lakes and the Midwest and the West here a little bit, there's a lot of really good teams, and so you just got to play your best and take them one at a time and see who's left standing.
What's interesting, you look at your team, you certainly have depth. You have not been afraid to go deep on your bench. You're led by Jordan Brink, nearly 16 points a game, second leading assist guy on the squad. Tyler Cruz, 15.6 points a game, 5.6 rebounds. Mickey DeVries, 9.2 points, 6.3 rebounds. Those are the big three, but that means, not to take away anything from Jordan Daly and Tyler Dykstra, all of them contributing points, Austin Parks, etc. But you have gone, all but 3 guys on your roster have played in 23 of the 29 games. You're not afraid to go deep and look for the right matchups.
No, I think that's one of the things that we have traditionally done is gone 9 or 10 guys, and occasionally even to 11. And we try to emphasize playing really hard for a little shorter period of time. Maybe a 4-minute run is kind of generally what we're looking at. Although some get a little longer, some a little shorter, and then. Then we try to mix and match a little bit as we move along. Sometimes we fit better, I think, with a little smaller group, and sometimes a little bigger group. But you got to develop those guys early on, and part of that's a little bit of the inconsistency to start a season where I think we got to play those guys, because I go into the year thinking we need to win our conference tournament to get in anyway, and so. As much as I like to win all the time, and we try to win every game, that's not it. I also think there's a big development component to getting guys out on the floor and game experience and getting them ready.
You talk about those 4-minute stretches. Of course, media timeouts being used in the NCAA tournament, whether there's media who needs them there or not. How much are those playing into a benefit for you, since the guys are already kind of used to that? You're getting a little bit of an extra break in there to rest them.
Yeah, I think it's been good for us. Obviously you talk about 4-minute runs, but the clock never stops exactly when you want it to, or there's foul trouble, or someone's not playing well, or someone is playing well. But our guys really, starting with the Hope tournament game, a lot of times talking about getting to the next media timeout. Let's lay it all out there the next minute 30 seconds to get to that media timeout, and a little extra rest. And I think it's I don't know if it's physically as much as maybe mentally some to have those breaks in there and to really go after it.
It's 16-2 in the last 18 games dating back to the turn of the new year. Those 2 losses being to Hope. Of course, you made up for that in the championship game, just absolutely dismantling them, 78-53 at their place. I'm sure that went over really well with their fans. You're also on the RAC committee. You're in charge of the Great Lakes committee. You're on the national committee. You have a ton on your plate on top of trying to coach your team. How are you doing balancing all of that?
Well, I tell you what, it's my first year on the national committee, and it's been great. What a great group of quality people who love Division III basketball and are really only interested in the best interest of the group. It's been really fun for me to get to know them, but most of the stuff now when it comes to bracketing, and today there was a call, going through hosting. I can't be on any of those because we're in the tournament ourselves, and so I feel a little like I'm a derelict of my duties. But a couple of guys I've known Brian Van Haften since he was a player, and I was his assistant coach on that staff, and so he gives me a little crap about that kind of thing from time to time. But I think everyone understands, and they're happy that we're still playing.
Your game against Illinois Wesleyan, I know you're just starting to kind of tackle that, as it were. How do you think you guys match up?
Well, I got to tell you, Dave, I honestly have not seen them yet. We're just starting to gather some things, and so first thing tomorrow morning, that's what we'd be doing. So I usually you run into teams in the Midwest where maybe you're watching, let's say a tape on Wheaton, and so you've seen someone else play. But I honestly haven't seen them at all. So, we'll try to figure it out this week and try to put a game plan together.
Well, good luck, Coach. I know we will certainly see you in Salem. Whether your team is along for the ride is to be determined. You'll take on Illinois Wesleyan, and, of course, on the other side of that bracket, sorry, I'm reminding myself here. It's Dickinson versus Wheaton, so the winners will have the chance to go on to Salem. Coach, I appreciate you coming on the show. As always, we give our guests the final word. Any final thoughts you'd like to share with those who may be tuning in, including, I know, some Illinois Wesleyan fans?
Well, it's just great to be a part of it. What a great experience, at Wash U this weekend. They're just terrific hosts, very friendly and helpful and all those kinds of things. And, I got a chance to meet the Wittenberg and Wilmington coaches, and again, Division III athletics is something incredibly special about it, and what we're trying to do beyond win basketball games, and it's really fun to be a part of it, especially this time of the year.
Well put, Coach. Congratulations again on a terrific season to this point. Wonderful run into the NCAA tournament. Good luck against Illinois Wesleyan. That game will be 7:30 local time at the Shirk Center. And I know we'll see you in Salem at least, and look forward to that as well.
Okay, looking forward to it. Thanks, Dave.
Take care. Kevin Vandestreek joining us here on Hoopsville. Again, Calvin faces off against Illinois Wesleyan in the second game on Friday at the Shirk Center. You can follow all that on d3hoops.com. Of course, thank you again to Coach Vandestreek for joining us. We're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to switch into some women's basketball, some thrilling games, some great results. Christopher Newport's women's basketball coach, Bill Broderick, will join us after the break. We'll also talk to Wisconsin Whitewater's women's basketball coach, Carrie Carollo, and Baldwin Wallace's head coach, Sherry Harrer, will join us here on the show. Then we will talk to Texas Dallas men's basketball coach Terry Butterfield. You'll also hear from Richard Stockton's men's basketball coach Jerry Matthews and Mary Washington's head coach Rod Wood. That's all coming up here on Hoopsville. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by d3hoops.com and the National Association of Basketball Coaches. When we return, women's basketball coach Bill Broderick at Christopher Newport coming up here on Hoopsville.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor's Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built.
Something I discovered in myself is that if I have a goal, and I can accomplish it.
It's a well-rounded experience.
At a Division III school, you primarily a student athlete, so the school is really shaped around you developing yourself as a complete individual.
It helps a lot that you have a family with your team that can guide you.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at d3hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Every season starts with a hope and a dream to play for the ultimate title, to become NCAA national champions. And you can experience it live at the 2014 NCAA Division III Women's Basketball Championship, March 21st through 22nd in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, hosted by the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. Affordable tickets now available. Visit ncaa.com/tickets today and make a date with champions.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you're enjoying the show. You can interact with us via Twitter at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. You can also email us hoopsville at d3hoops.com or on Facebook at facebook.com/Hoopsville. I want to thank once again Kevin Vandestreek from Calvin for joining us here on the show previously. If you have any questions for our guests, those are how you can interact with us and ask them. Or if you have questions for us, that is certainly allowed as well. We certainly would love to hear from you as we go along. Going to switch into different gear here. Women's basketball now. Talk to one of those other teams who had to hit the road and do it the hard way and beat the hosts to get to where they are. And joining us on the Hoopsville hotline also from the Great Lakes region is Bill Broderick from Baldwin Wallace. His Yellow Jackets 22-6 on the season, moving on to the round of 16. Coach, thanks for joining us here on Hoopsville.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me, and actually coming to you from CNU, actually.
Well, it's nice to see you guys got back home safely from Ferrum. You missed out on the nasty weather. I happened to be in Virginia Beach on Friday. It wasn't too pleasant. So you might have been lucky sitting there in Ferrum, at least getting there early, as it were. You guys defeated Eastern Mennonite rather easily, somewhat, 15 points, 78-63 to advance on to play Ferrum and defeated them by 9 on the home court. What do we not know by looking at just that simple data?
Well, I tell you, I think the scores definitely didn't really reflect the games that we had. We definitely had some tough games this weekend. We knew we would, for sure. 2 very experienced squads. And especially with Ferrum, I think, for the people who haven't had a chance to get out and head to a game at Ferrum, they've just got an electric environment. Definitely one of the best home courts at the Division III level I've seen, and standing room only. So it was definitely quite a tough game for us.
You guys, sorry, I'm thinking about 6 things at the same time, which is never good. You guys got into the tournament with an at-large bid after losing to York in the semifinals of the CAC. This was your first chance in the CAC. How do you think the switch in conference went this season? Did it have any ability to help you guys kind of win in this first weekend at least?
Yeah, definitely a tough conference. I think, the depth of the CAC, I think, was greater than what we had last year in the USA South. I mean, we had 2 really strong teams last year in Ferrum and Maryville who both went on to the tournament. But this year I felt like our conference really had, 5 really good teams that were all in, I think, consideration at one time or another for NCAA tournament. So, having our conference tournament, getting a chance to play a team like Salisbury in the semifinals that was, on the bubble, and then having to go to York and try to win a game there was really tough in front of their crowd. So I think, pretty much night in, night out, you were challenged, and I think that really helped us for a tough weekend like we had this past weekend.
If anybody's curious, I am not that big an idiot on my show. Apparently, I've been labeling you everything with Baldwin Wallace because they've been on my mind, and I'm obviously not talking to Bill Broderick from Baldwin Wallace. That segment's coming up later with Coach Sherry Harrer. I'm talking to Christopher Newport's Bill Broderick. Team is 24-5 overall. Apparently, my brain is still stuck on the road, returning from Virginia. It doesn't change the result. You did beat Eastern Monday Night in Ferrum to get to where you are. When you look at how this team has played this season, 24-5, you had a loss to Randolph-Macon at the beginning of the season. You lost to York. Then you went on a tear until mid-February when you lost to Mary Washington in surprisingly lopsided fashion on your own home court. And then took a loss to Marymount, and we mentioned losing to the CAC championship game to York. What was that Mary Washington game all about, and is there anything you guys learned from that you're trying to use now?
Yeah, we have had it's just been one of those years where we've been hit with one major injury after another, and I feel like we've kind of had to reinvent ourselves a few different times so far. And, we really planned coming into the season on having Camry Green, who's one of our, kind of our big 3. And, unfortunately, she was not able to go and ended up missing the first 15 to 17 games of the season. And I think going into playing Randolph-Macon and even early with York, we were still trying to figure out, how to play without our 6'2" post player. And, then I felt like really started to lock in a little bit there, kind of added her into the mix. And then, in the Mary Washington game, we were rolling, felt pretty good. We had real good success against them the first time at their place. And, unfortunately, 2 or 3 minutes into the game, our preseason third-team All-American, Tia Perry, went down. And so we lost her, got into some foul trouble, and I think it was just really just kind of a moment of disbelief as far as what was going on, and, everybody looking over their shoulder of, when's she coming back and who's next. And, she was really kind of our really the heartbeat of our defense. and also really one of the few players that we have that, once the offense is not going well, she can just really kind of create a shot on her own. So I think there was a little bit of that kind of going on there, and we've, tried to spend the last 2 or 3 weeks, reinventing ourselves again and finding some different kids to step up and go from there. So I think that was kind of it. She was able to play a little bit this weekend, doing the best she can on a broken foot. It's getting, better each week, and so I'm sure she'll get a chance to play more this coming weekend. But it's just really hard. I mean, you just can't replace a talent or a player like that, and especially this late in the season. So we really had some girls step up. Brandy Holland, sophomore, did a great job and stepped up, and one of our freshmen, Lauren Cox, stepped up for us. So it was good to see. But it's just kind of been a tale of 2 or 3 different seasons so far this year.
So you defeat Ferrum at their place in the last round. You now take on the next host in Whitman in Walla Walla, Washington. All teams in this pod had to be flown somewhere, whether it was everybody going to Thomas More, coming to your place, coming to Texas, Tyler, it didn't matter. Everybody was going to hit the plains. How you've gotten the news now for maybe 9 hours or 8 hours? How are you starting to prepare this team for what will be a long journey across the country and take on one of the top teams in the country?
Yeah, I think everybody was a little surprised. I think most people thought we were all headed to Thomas More, just because of the smaller flights, I guess, if you will. But I guess when you look at it this way, I mean, I guess if you're on the plane, it doesn't matter if it's going that way or this way or how long. And I know the West teams have to travel a lot out east. And so I'm sure the NCAA just felt like this was a good opportunity to, to have everyone out there and have those guys get a home game. So, at this point, everybody's good. I don't think our road is really very easy. It reminds me a lot of last year when, we got a chance, came out of our place here after the round of 32 and got a chance to play number 5 Montclair State and then play at number 1 DePaul. And it looked like it was kind of going to be very similar with Whitman and then Thomas More. And so a little bit different, but, I mean, at this point, you've got to beat everybody if you're going to have a chance to win it all. And, we know they're going to be extremely tough. And, so we anticipate really having our hands full.
Have you talked to the team yet to prepare them for this?
We talked a little bit on our way back today on the bus. When we got the news, we were still traveling back from Ferrum, and we talked about going out there, and we've got a few kids that haven't been on the West Coast at all yet, and so they're
Pacific time zone.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think they're a little excited. I mean, obviously, it's gonna. It's definitely going to hurt our ability to get fans there. I mean, we were probably about a 9 or 10 hour drive from Thomas More, so I know, some people might have made that trek, but, now we'll probably only really have a handful. But, we only had 3 people last year at DePaul when we were able to upset Montclair State. So, it is what it is. I think Whitman's had a great season. I think they've earned the right to have a home game, and so we're just looking forward to the challenge ahead.
Quickly before we let you go, regarding that, when are you guys going to take off? How are you going to try to adjust to the time switch?
Yeah, it looks like we're probably going to have to take off on Wednesday. It's been so difficult just because our kids are in midterms, and so we're trying to get everybody in as many classes as possible. So we probably would have taken off Thursday morning if it was at Thomas More, but I think now we're probably going to have to take off and see what types of flights are available on Wednesday. But so we'll be there 2 days or whatever before we play. But it is what it is, and so we'll step up, and I'm sure the adrenaline will help keep us going.
I'm sure. Well, congratulations on the run so far. Captain's the only CAC team left alive in the NCAA tournament, and you'll get the nice trip out to Walla Walla, Washington. At least it's a great name to say. And good luck. As always, we give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you'd like to share with those who may be tuning in?
I just want to really thank all our parents that got a chance to come out this weekend and made that drive out, and have an opportunity to publicly thank my kids and just let them know how proud I am of them, and just glad that this journey has continued.
Well, very good. Congratulations once again, Coach. Good luck, safe travels, and we look forward to maybe talking to you down the road.
Thanks, Dave.
Absolutely. Bill Broderick from Christopher Newport. Team is 24-5 overall. They will move on to play Whitman in the NCAA tournament, round of 16. Those games again, all at Whitman in Walla Walla, Washington. That's the pod where everybody had to fly somewhere, and they chose to go to Whitman. Going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to jump out about halfway to Walla Walla, Washington. We'll jump out to Wisconsin, and we'll talk to their women's basketball coach, Carrie Carrillo from the Whitewater Warhawks, about their team's big matchup against Oshkosh coming up. And, of course, all of those games taking place at DePaul. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com and the National Association of Basketball Coaches. If you'd like to join us on Twitter or ask us questions, do it via Twitter at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us Hoopsville at D3Hoops.com or on Facebook at Facebook.com/Hoopsville. We'll be back with more Hoopsville after this. Whitewater women after the break.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.D3Hoops.com.
Every season starts with hope and a dream to play for the ultimate title, to become NCAA national champions. And you can experience it live at the 2014 NCAA Division III Men's Basketball Championship, March 21st and 22nd in Salem, Virginia, hosted by the Old Dominion Athletic Conference and the City of Salem. Affordable tickets now available. Visit ncaa.com/tickets today and make a date with champions.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor's Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built.
I did receive a non-athletic scholarship upon entering school.
I got the presidential scholarship, which was huge for me.
I think there's more opportunities for academic scholarships in Division III.
I did receive academic scholarships. Just being involved on campus, being a leader, all those things combined kind of get me recognized. It's a great experience for me.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody, presented by D3Hoops.com, the National Association of Basketball Coaches. If you have questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, Hoopsville at D3Hoops.com. Facebook is Facebook.com/Hoopsville. Of course, right there at the bottom of the screen is all of that information. You can interact with us. We certainly appreciate any support that you have regarding that. We'd love to hear from you as well. Talk about the teams who advanced on to the NCAA tournament out of a crazy weekend, to say the least. And in the middle of our conversation with some of the women's teams that got the job done this weekend, including those who won on the road and had to beat the home team. You'll notice the last 2 interviews, we talked to Calvin men's basketball, and they beat WashU to advance on in the last game. That game at WashU. Of course, St. Thomas, or I should say Christopher Newport defeated Ferrum at Ferrum in the last game to move on. And the other team that had to do the exact same thing was the Wisconsin Whitewater Warhawks, who had to defeat St. Thomas at St. Thomas to move on to the NCAA tournament. And joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline, presented by the City of Salem, host of the Division III Men's Basketball Championship Tournament, is Coach Carrie Carollo, who joins us to discuss her team's big win over St. Thomas and other factors. Coach, welcome to Hoopsville.
Thanks for having me.
So you go on the road. You got to face off against St. Thomas in that last game, but of course before that you had to face off against Concordia Moorhead, and that was a tight game as well. How did the weekend go from your point of view, though?
Well, we played two very, very good teams, and adding the factor of having to go on the road always kind of throws everything for a little bit more of a, that X factor of whether or not you're going to be able to handle all those different variables, but I think both teams, very strong programs, very strong traditions, so we knew we were going to have a tough road ahead of us. So we just really tried to prepare and make sure that we went into those games relaxed and confident and really just tried to have fun and just really let the game come to us. But, Concordia Moorhead presented a lot of challenges with their size, their speed. They're very balanced. They can attack from the post and the perimeter. Great team. And then St. Thomas, of course, having just an awesome season as well. They've got some phenomenal players, and, Coach Sin does a great job there. So we had definitely a huge hill to climb, and we're very fortunate to come out there. And we talked a lot about just surviving and advancing, and we were fortunate enough to make that happen.
It's really interesting because we saw you out in Las Vegas at the D3Hoops.com Classic. Carthage had proceeded to thump you, for lack of a better description, 91-77, and then Ohio Northern just stayed with you nip and tuck, defeating you 68-67. I know you were unhappy with how everything had transpired, not so thrilled with how the team had played. Team didn't look like it was completely in sync from my point of view. But since then, you guys have been on a tear. Your only loss coming to Wisconsin Superior in the that was the semifinals, if I'm not mistaken, of the WIAC tournament. Of course, that was a bit of a surprise. They beat you by 21. What changed between what we saw in Vegas and what you guys produced in 2014?
Yeah, that was a very challenging tournament. We knew going out there that we were going to have two great teams to play against again. So we just came off a break, and it's tough because with our season the way it's laid out, we have to give our girls a week off in between, and we came back. We had a day of practice, and I'm not one for making a whole lot of excuses, but we weren't ready to go. I mean, we weren't ready to play. We weren't focused. We're playing against Carthage, who's, playing really well and, very traditionally strong program, and we just were flat. There's no chemistry. There was no energy. Again, just a really disappointing effort on our program's part and an eye-opening experience. I can't remember the last time. It's been a while since our program has lost back-to-back games that early in the season. So especially for our seniors, it's something for them to say, hey, is this the kind of season we want to have, and, what are we all about? And so we bounced back, and we got right into conference, and, it was important for us to win that. We actually went on the road again when we got back, and it was important for us to win that game, and then we played Oshkosh at home, and I think that was kind of a pivotal game for us. I think that if we hadn't won that game, our season might have looked a little bit different, but we were able to win. I think it ended up being by 7 or 9 at home, and we just really started to gain our confidence back and started gelling and realizing that we can't play selfish basketball. We got to do it for each other, and and then we just started really playing well. And the addition of Kristen Ruckty has been amazing. I mean, she's been able to step in and really give us a great punch off the bench, and to be able to go to a 6'2" kid off the bench that can carry her own, is a nice little option to have for me and for our team, because we have a tendency to get in foul trouble sometimes. But so that made a big difference, for us to kind of have those wake-up calls. And I felt like even that game against Superior, I mean, it was embarrassing. I mean, and we flat out told our team that, that's not how we play and that's not how we prepare. And I said, if we're fortunate enough to get a second chance to play in the national tournament, we need to take advantage of it. And I think for them, they realize that second chances don't come along very often, and we need to make the most of it.
Yeah, of course, your team was the one that made an amazing run into the NCAA tournament last year. Had two incredible buzzer beaters by a player named Merg, who hit against Amherst to get the chance to go in the championship game. Of course, DePaul did what they did to everybody else, and so I can't. That's more along the lines of how just good DePaul was at that point in time. How much did the experience from last year almost kind of have a hangover feeling to this year?
We really tried to separate last year from this year because we're not the same team. I mean, we're just not. We lost 6 seniors. We added a bunch of new freshmen. And right from the start of the year, we talked about, this is a new team with new leadership, and, we can't worry about what happened last year. And our goal was really to just make this season our own and really try to accomplish the things that we wanted to do with this team. And I think it took us a little while to figure that out. I'm not going to lie. It took us a little while for especially our underclassmen to kind of accept the new leadership and really for all of us to gel. But, we've got a great group of seniors, and they're passionate about what they're doing, and they're very driven. And it didn't take long for our underclassmen to realize that and kind of hop on board.
I'm talking to Carrie Carollo, head coach for Wisconsin Whitewater. Team is 24-4 now and moving on to the NCAA tournament to take on a familiar foe in Oshkosh coming up here. The game's at DePaul. Obviously, Oshkosh awfully darn well. It would be, there's nothing really that you can discover new about them. There's probably nothing they can discover new about you. There's nothing you can hide. There's nothing you're going to reveal that's over the years all that surprising. You faced them twice this year and you beat them twice. 72-66 in the first meeting and 64-46. So how do you get ready for a team that this darn well?
That's a good question, and I think really for us it's going to come down to whether or not we can set the tempo of the game. We're very very different style of play, teams, and we contrast each other tremendously. And I think the tempo of the game is really going to be important. And so, that's going to be huge. And if we can continue to play some pretty solid defense, obviously that's going to help us as well. And rebounding is going to help us. But it's tough, and both teams are, fighting for the same thing. And, I'm happy that it's another one of our conference schools is advancing. It's great. It's great for our conference. It's great for Wisconsin to be well represented. But it's going to be a challenge. I know our seniors are not going to want to end their career losing to Oshkosh. So they're going to be highly motivated to win that game. But at the same time, you have to be a little concerned about the fact, like you said, that we won those first 2 games and that we're not thinking too far ahead of ourselves. So we need to really make sure that we pound that home and make sure we concentrate on what happens on Friday.
Kind of like last year, this year, not a specific weapon on your squad. Mary Merg leads the way at 13.1 points a game. You got Caitlin Thill, 13 points a game. She's also handed out well over 100 assists this season, while hauling down also 5 rebounds a game. Nearly 12 points from Amy Mandrill. Kristen Ruchty, 11 points a game. Abby Reeves, 9.3. Katie Burton, 8.8. 6 points from Riley Stewart. You have a lot of depth, and I mentioned Ruchty. She's also been out with injury. She's only played in 14 games this season, but that's almost added to the depth that this team has had. Is that a blessing, or can that sometimes be a little advantageous considering, you don't have a go-to player necessarily when you need one?
Yeah, that's kind of the challenge of that type of team is that, you just really never know who's going to step up and who's really going to give you that consistent effort every single night. But at the same time, you know that somebody is, so it is nice to have that balanced attack. I think it makes it a lot tougher to scout us and to prepare for us because you just never know which one of them or 2 of them is gonna have a good night. But I think the great thing about this group is that they've really learned to share the ball And, with Mary Merg and Caitlin Phil, I mean, they can break people down off the dribble with the best of them. And so I'm sure for them, they can see those opportunities. But at the same time, we've got a pretty good post game, so we need to get it in there as well and let those girls go to work. But it's finding that balance, and that, unselfishness to share the ball and really look for each other. And I think that they finally, are starting to really figure that out. And, if we can continue to score the way we are, I think we're going to be in good shape. I'd really like to see us play some better defense and be able to lock down on teams. But when you go against St. Thomas, I mean, Taylor Young, I don't know how anybody can stop her. I mean, she's unbelievable. She shot fadeaway jumpers with us in her face, and, Maggie Weir's up and under move over and over. I'm like, oh, my goodness. They're just great players. So you do your best to try and slow them down, and hopefully you can be on from, on offense.
Certainly don't want to. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't want to look ahead too far. You have a big game against Oshkosh, but should you win that, you've either got a big rematch with Carthage or you're going up against a big rematch in DePaul. Again, I know your focus is on Oshkosh, but just you don't mind, humor us and let your mind wander one. That's an interesting setup come the next game. Should you get there, you've got two teams I know you want to beat.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't even know if it's that I want to be, I think...
It might be the team.
I think our girls definitely want to have another opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something they have to work for. I think they got to work for it on Friday, and that's kind of going to be our goal and our theme is that, if you want to have that another opportunity to get a chance to play one of those teams, then you got to win on Friday. And that's got to be our focus because Oshkosh is a great team. Brad Fisher has done a fantastic job. They're playing really well. They're shooting the ball really well right now. So we got to be focused on winning that game first.
Well, Coach, I appreciate you coming on the show and chatting with us. I know you're in a much better mood than we saw you back in Vegas. To say the least. Good luck against Oshkosh coming up here at DePaul. Coming up on Friday. That game, I believe, is the early one. I actually don't know what time that game is. Hold on. To be announced, apparently. You probably don't even know either at this point.
No, I don't know either.
But most likely the first game of the two, somewhere between 5 and 6 local time. Coach, as always, we give the guests the final word. Any final thoughts you'd like to share with those who may be tuning in?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to, first of all of our fans that have supported us over the years and our parents. They're amazing. And then to you all for the fantastic job you do covering D3 sports. It's great because I know that we're kind of that hidden gem, that not a whole lot of people know about, D3 women's basketball and men's basketball. So we really appreciate all the support that you give us and the recognition and the opportunity to speak, to the country about our teams and our programs. And so thanks for all your hard work and doing the things that you do.
Well, thank you, Coach. I appreciate the kind words. Good luck this weekend. I'm certainly going to be interested in seeing how it all plays out. And good luck to your team. And we will hopefully be talking soon.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Take care. Carrie Carolla joining us here on Hoopsville. Appreciate her taking the time to do so. Again, big game against Oshkosh coming up, trying to beat them for a third time this season, and then they've got a rematch. If they beat Oshkosh, they're guaranteed a rematch, either with Carthage, who thumped them earlier this season, or DePaul, who beat them in the championship game last year. That's a fascinating setup there for Whitewater, though, again, got to get past Oshkosh on Friday first. Those games again at DePaul in Greencastle, Indiana. We're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to have one more women's guest here. Baldwin Wallace women's coach Sherry Harrer will join us on the show, talk about her Yellow Jackets and how they got into the NCAA tournament, despite my best efforts to apparently talk to her while talking to Bill Broderick early in the show. If you got any questions for us or our guests, feel free to email us or Hoopsville at d3hoops.com. You can also tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Facebook us as well at facebook.com/Hoopsville. When we come back, once again, we'll talk to Baldwin Wallace women's basketball coach Sherry Harrer, coming up here on Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com and the National Association of Basketball Coaches.
Every season starts with a hope and a dream to play for the ultimate title, to become NCAA national champions. And you can experience it live at the 2014 NCAA Division III Women's Basketball Championship, March 21st through 22nd in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, hosted by the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. Affordable tickets now available. Visit ncaa.com/tickets today and make a date with champions.
Something I discovered in myself is that if I have a goal, then I can accomplish it.
It's a well-rounded experience.
At a Division III school, you primarily a student athlete, so the school is really shaped around you developing yourself as a complete individual.
It helps a lot that you have a family with your team that can guide you.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Joining us, well, thanks for joining us, I should say. You can join us on Twitter and ask us questions or email or Facebook. They're all at the bottom of the screen. We always rattle it off just to be sure, at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us hoopsville at D3Hoops.com or on Facebook at Facebook.com/Hoopsville. Lots of ways you can interact with us. We certainly appreciate it. Sorry, got lots of things going on, so trying to figure it all out. You can, again, we got more guests coming up. We're going to be talking shortly here with women's basketball coach Sherry Harrer at Baldwin-Wallace, and then we'll hear from Richard Stockton and Mary Washington in interviews that myself and Gordon Mann conducted on site. And then you'll hear from Gordon Mann later here on the show. Let's go back to the Hoopsville Hotline presented by the Division III Men's Basketball Championship Tournament in the city of Salem. And joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline is Baldwin-Wallace's women's basketball coach Sherry Harrer. Joining us, Coach, welcome to Hoopsville.
Great to be here, Dave.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to join us. Team is 22-6 overall. Of course, beating Lebanon Valley at York, 66-48 in the first round, and then defeating York at home, 67-52. If nobody has figured it out, we have pretty much had all guests on who have beat the home team in the second round to advance on to the tournament. I think a lot of people were not surprised, but interested that as many teams came out of the OAC, and then were interested to see how they would do. I think a lot of people probably had questions on how you guys would do out in the Mid-Atlantic. Did you expect to have as easy a time against Lebanon Valley and then beat a team like York by 15?
Of course not. You know, you get in the NCAAs and you expect every game to be close. We're just excited to be in the tournament and just we're happy to be playing, and really had no expectations. We just decided to go out and play and see what happens.
This is a squad that is only 22-6. You kind of had those losses kind of just spotted around. I mean, you lost by 1 to Tufts to start the season. That certainly looks good. Capital got you guys, then Carnegie Mellon did out of conference. Capital came back and got you a second time. Ohio Northern tripped you up in the next game. Of course, Capital got you again in the conference championship game. If you didn't play Capital, you had a terrific season.
Exactly.
I know you probably would like not to have seen them ever again. What did any of those losses do to help you guys?
I think just competing in the OAC, it's a dogfight every night. Our ninth place team was 6-1 non-league, and our eighth place team was 7-0 non-league, and our 10th place team was in the NCAAs last year. I mean, it's a brutal league, and I think night in, night out, I mean, it's a dogfight, and when you're playing that kind of competition every single night, it prepares you for postseason.
I was the capital loss in the championship game. Did you think that could have put you guys in a scenario where you wouldn't make the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, we thought we were done. Actually, it was in the semifinal.
Right. I'm sorry, semi. Correct.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, which made it even worse that we thought we were finished. We really. There's been so many times that, like in 2004 when Wilmington won it, we tied with Capital for the OSC championship in the regular season, lost in the semifinal, got left out of the tournament, and Wilmington won the national championship.
Yeah.
So it had happened before, and I really wasn't real hopeful that we were going to get a bid.
And how do you address that with your team? I mean, how do you kind of lay down the situation? Hey, we're up for an at-large, not sure we're going to get it. Just kind of stick around. We'll let you know. How do you kind of tackle that kind of thing?
Well, we really approached it as though our season was finished, and of course, everybody was pretty excited when it wasn't. But we didn't want the kids' hopes. I think it's worse when your hopes get up and then you get crushed than when you're already crushed and you get a second life.
I was going to say, did you guys have a viewing party? How did
Nope.
you? I was thinking you didn't. So how did you tackle letting them know, or were they being sneaky in class, maybe with the computers on, watching it themselves?
Actually, there were about 4 kids in my assistant's office watching it just on their own. They just gathered there, and a few of the other ones had it up on their own, and of course word spread really quickly as soon as it, and we were lucky we were in that top bracket, so it came up pretty quickly, and obviously word spreads really fast when that happens.
Yeah, I suspect, and you're right, the suspense was over for you guys really darn early with the announcement, of course, coming I think you would have been the 5th pod or 6th pod announced. So you get past York at their place. I suspect the place was rocking. It's 30 minutes from my house, but I had gone south instead. Of course, your reward is you'll take on undefeated FDU Florham at their place. So you've already gotten one NCAA team on their home court. How do you prepare for this other NCAA team on their home court?
Yeah, we just take the approach. I think we do what we do. We're trying to wade through some film now and get started on that scout. But, at this point, sometimes there's extra pressure when you play at home. We've been in that boat and have lost for the right to go to a Final Four and Elite Eight game, and that hurts worse than others. So, at this point, obviously it is an advantage to be at home, but I don't think that necessarily gives you swift passage into the next round.
Yeah, sure. Of course, this team last time was in the NCAA tournament, or this far in the NCAA tournament, I should say, was 2006. Beat Williams and then advanced on to and lost to Scranton. Interesting enough, Scranton on the other side of the same pod that you're in now.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, nobody has the experience from the player's point of view of being in this situation. So how do you get the team ready to play for the second weekend?
These kids are so excited. We thought our season was over, and they really enjoy being together, and they're just cherishing every moment. And our preparation, this team has really practiced well all year long. They come to work every single time we step on that floor for practice. So nothing's really changed in that regard. And if anything, you're just trying to keep them calm. They get so excited that's a bigger job for me to keep them calm as far as what's going on. But again, playing in the OAC really has prepared us well for having to be in your A game all the time.
This team certainly has the appearance of deep. It only has 2 seniors. They're in the top 4 in scoring, but you essentially have 5 players in double figures. Smolik, 12 points. Larson, 11.2. Mangus, 11.1. Rohrbach, 10.3. 9.8 from Munro. But that's also where it seems like it'd be the biggest key for this squad.
Yeah, we really believe our depth is a big advantage, and it's tough to scout us probably because you can't remember everybody. And again, the best thing is these kids have really bought into what we're doing, and we try to bring a high intensity because no one has to play a ton of minutes. They're going to be out there. They can go hard for a few minutes and get a rest and cheer their teammates on while they're doing it.
Is there anything you can take from other points of the season that gets you ready for an FDU Florham, that gets you ready for a team? I mean, have you, by what you've seen on tape, did you play anybody who's like FDU Florham?
Well, Mount Union presses all the time, and they play a similar style. Not exactly the same, but a similar style. And Heidelberg in our league also tries to pick you up full court some. So, yeah, I think those two teams have helped us.
Talking here with Sherry Herrera, Baldwin Wallace's women's basketball coach. Again, team is 22-6 overall. A lot of teams got in from the OAC. What does that mean for the conference?
It's nice to finally have the respect to get our teams in. The league has always been very, very good, and we've usually struggled to get 2 in, and never have gotten 3 in, and 4 was like a miracle. But I think it does reflect the quality of the league. You know, Ohio Northern finished 3rd in our regular season and had wins over, I believe, Whitewater, Baruch, and Carthage. And they were 3rd in our league. So that obviously helped us. And like I already mentioned, you know, 8th and 9th place teams went between them 13-1, and our 10th place team was in the NCAAs last year. So the quality from top to bottom, obviously it raised our strength of schedule with a lot of teams getting a lot of non-league wins.
Does it also sting, though, on the flip side of that Capital loses in the first round on a close game against Ferrum? Ohio Northern loses in a close game at home. I'm sorry, on the road in the first round against Transylvania. Of course, John Carroll ran into a buzzsaw in Thomas More. That game, unfortunately, wasn't close, but they're all first-round losses. Does that also, though, sting a little bit for the conference?
Yeah, of course. John Carroll actually won their first game.
Oh, correct, yes.
More in the second game. Yeah, and yeah, you hope that everybody does well in those situations. I don't think it reflects that we shouldn't have had 4 teams in. I think all those teams were deserving, and yeah, you hope they had done better. But this time of the year, you know, so much of it's matchups as well.
Yeah,
you know, and that's what happens to us with Capital. It's just a tough matchup for us. And John Carroll, who we beat twice, is a little better matchup for us. Those things happen in the game of basketball, and when they're close games, you know, every possession is critical. And Northern was beat up. They lost in the next to last game. I believe there were 3 games to go in the regular season, lost one of their starters to a knee injury. So they were a little shorthanded anyway going into the tournament, which obviously doesn't help.
Of course, you went a little bit east to go to York. You'll go a little further east now to get to Madison, New Jersey. You're turning into the bus warriors here.
Yes, we are.
I was is it almost not a routine? I don't want to say it that way, but can you almost stick to what you did this previous week, this weekend, and to do that again for Florham, or do you have to adjust anything?
As far as our routine and what we're doing with our
travel and all that.
Yeah, we're going to do pretty much the same thing. It's actually not quite an hour and a half further to go, and we may stay overnight on Saturday night if we get that far, because we got home at with the time change, we got home at 4:30 in the morning.
Ooh.
So that was, and it's obviously even a little further if we're fortunate enough to get to Saturday.
You're nuts to have returned from York.
After
that game.
NCAA doesn't pay for that night. So.
Oh, that's too bad to hear. Coach, congratulations on the win. Certainly impressive, to say the least, that you guys are moving on to the NCAA tournament again with big wins over 2 Mid-Atlantic teams in Lebanon Valley, and, of course, nationally ranked York as well. We'll move on and we'll take on undefeated FDU Florham. In the next game, it's the home game. I don't know what time that is. I don't think we've posted it yet, but it's obviously this will probably be the second game of them all. As always, we give our guests the final word. Any final thoughts you'd like to share with those who may be tuning in?
Again, we're just so happy to have been included in the tournament, and I really appreciate your support of Division III basketball, and particularly women's basketball. There's not a lot of people out there that give D3 women's basketball a whole lot of attention, and we just really appreciate all that you do for us.
Well, thank you, Coach. I appreciate it. Some of my best guests this year have certainly been on the women's side, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. Good luck the rest of the way. Maybe we'll be talking to you again as the road to Stevens Point gets just a little bit shorter.
Sounds great, Dave.
All right, take care. Coach Sherry Harrer joining us from Baldwin Wallace. Getting 22-6, they will take on, as we mentioned, FDU Florham coming up on Saturday. If you have any questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us hoopsville at d3hoops.com or join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Hoopsville. Did get a question regarding Dickinson. Wanted my take on Dickinson's big men, or a big win over Worcester. What do you think about them moving forward? Hey, Dickinson got a great win there. Very impressed with that victory. I don't want this to sound like I'm taking anything away from Dickinson, but once again, Worcester not living up to expectations. I don't know how many times people have expected them to get to Salem, or at least the second weekend. They're at home. They lose another one at home. They lost to Cabrini last year at home. You'll remember. I'm going to actually, because I'm talking about this, want to call that up, because it's amazing how many times Worcester just has not gotten the job done this year. They finished 26-4 on the season, and I'm just quickly calling up the last X amount of years. We'll go through it together. 21 seasons, 30-win seasons. Last year, again, losing in the third round of the tournament to Cabrini at home. The year before that, in 2012, they did lose on the road to Illinois Wesleyan, or they lost, I think that was at Illinois Wesleyan. I don't remember. No, it couldn't have been at Illinois Wesleyan, but they lost to Illinois Wesleyan by 2. That game, trying to figure out where it was. Well, it was at Worcester. I'm sorry. So that was at Worcester. So that's the last 2 years that they lost at home. The year that they went 31-3, which was 2011, they did get to Salem, lost in the championship game to St. Thomas, but that was a year I don't think many people expected them there. The year before that, they lost to Guilford. That game on the road, though. The year before that, they lost to Capital in the second round at Capital. The year before that, they lost to Wash U in the first round at Augustana. The year before that, Worcester losing to Wash U in the consolation game in Salem. And what I'm trying to get at is the Scots are one of the winningest programs in Division III history, and I don't think they ever live up to the expectations that have been put in front of them. That being said, congratulations to Dickinson. Certainly played very well in that game. I was impressed that they were able to stay with Worcester, especially with Worcester's size. I think Dickinson has size inside, don't get me wrong, but Worcester, I think, maybe just a little bit of a bigger presence. Of course, Dickinson beat Geneseo State in the first game. Not surprised with that result. I had Dickinson winning that one. But the win, low-scoring affair, I think played into Dickinson's hand there against Worcester. Now, of course, they take on Wheaton in the next game. Wheaton playing very good basketball right now, maybe a sleeper right now. Of course, Dickinson gets the win. They're going to face off against Calvin or Illinois Wesleyan. Dickinson's playing in a part of the pool they haven't been necessarily. This is teams that Dickinson doesn't tend to play, and I think this will give Coach Alan Soretti and his squad a chance to really show who they are, or maybe kind of come to grips with a different style of basketball. You're going to see different things from Wheaton, Calvin, or Illinois Wesleyan should Dickinson still move on. So mad props to the Red Devils. I'm very impressed that they got there. By the way, some people maybe misunderstood my point of view on Dickinson getting in the tournament. I'm not opposed to Dickinson being in the NCAA tournament. I was opposed to others being behind them in the regional rankings. My opinion was if the Mid-Atlantic region had put one team, whether it was Messiah, whether it was Stevenson, whether it was Christopher Newport, ahead of Dickinson, I have no facts on this, but my feeling is then that team would have gotten in, and then Dickinson still would have gotten in. Dickinson had the criteria clearly late in the draw that got them in the tournament. So that's kind of my point of view. I'm frustrated that Dickinson was almost a blocker for the rest of the Mid-Atlantic, clearly because Dickinson got in, but it was so late that the other teams came to the table late. On the flip side, on the Atlantic region, it's pretty much well known now that Staten Island played blocker on William Patterson. William Patterson probably would have gotten in if they had been ahead of Staten Island. So interesting dichotomy there, but congratulations to Dickinson nonetheless. Going to take a break. When we come back, you'll hear my conversation with Rod Wood and head coach for Mary Washington, and my conversation with their starting point guard, Dom Morrow. You'll also hear Gordon Mann's conversation with Richard Stockton's head coach, Jerry Matthews, after their big win over Cabrini. And then after that, you'll hear from Gordon Mann himself. We'll get his take on that. We'll also get his take on the women's side of things as well. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com, the National Association of Basketball Coaches. If you'd like to ask us a question, please feel free to tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Don't forget to join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Hoopsville, and of course on email at hoopsville@d3hoops.com. And I'm actually mistaken. We're going to go to Texas Dallas's head coach next first, and then all those interviews. So you're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com and the National Association of Basketball Coaches. I forgot Texas Dallas head coach Terry Butterfield coming up next on Hoopsville.
Something I discovered in myself is that if I have a goal, and I can accomplish it.
It's a well-rounded experience.
At a Division III school, you primarily a student athlete, so the school is really shaped around you developing yourself as a complete individual.
It helps a lot that you have a family with your team that can guide you.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Every season starts with hope and a dream to play for the ultimate title, to become NCAA national champions. And you can experience it live at the 2014 NCAA Division III Men's Basketball Championship, March 21st and 22nd in Salem, Virginia, hosted by the Old Dominion Athletic Conference and the City of Salem. Affordable tickets now available. Visit ncaa.com/tickets today and make a date with champions.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody, as we continue our coverage of the first weekend of the NCAA Division III Championship tournaments. Of course, crazy weekend as it were. We appreciate you taking the time to join us on the show, whether it be live or the archive. If you got questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us hoopsville@d3hoops.com or join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Hoopsville. Certainly one of the teams we wanted to talk about was one of the teams who got one of the big wins this weekend at home. This is about the only team we're talking to who won a home game this weekend. Won 2 home games this weekend. And joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline, presented by the City of Salem, and who hosts the Division III Men's Basketball Championship Tournament, Final Four, and Terry Butterfield joining us from Texas Dallas. Team won 27-3. Coach, you guys won in thrilling fashion to get past Whitworth in an overtime game. Interesting setup to it. We'll show it again to the viewers in just a minute, but just tell us about the environment, because the other thing I saw and certainly got heard of was it was an awesome environment at Texas Dallas.
Yeah, Dave, I think you just used the word crazy, and I think that is a perfect depiction of what went on at our place this weekend. I don't know if you know this or not, but this was our first opportunity to host a regional 4-team tournament.
4 teams, right.
Right, and that was very exciting for us. You know, we've only had athletics at UT Dallas since 1998, so this was a brand new experience for us, and we wanted to do a bang-up job, and I really think we did. I thought it was an electric atmosphere. We were going on spring break this week, so a lot of kids left for the beach, as you know.
Yeah.
And but the administration at my school did a great job of promoting, and the kids that were around really turned out in force, and this provided a tremendous atmosphere for our kids to participate in.
It was, I mean, I saw pictures, I saw video, I could hear the crowd, I heard reactions from people that it was a wonderful environment. You guys certainly took advantage of the opportunity at home. You got Chapman in the first game, beat them semi-easily, 85-70, probably to no surprise, but that Whitworth game was a thriller and a classic, and no one seemed to really put their foot down on the game at all.
Well, I got to tell you, you know, I thought we got off to a terrible start, and I think Whitworth had a lot to do with that. I thought that they were extremely well coached. They were ready to go. They presented some big problems for us in a variety of ways, and they just seized the moment and took it to us early. We looked a little bit aloof, and you know, we weren't moving and cutting and doing the things that we normally do. And again, I think they had a lot to do with that. And we went into the locker room, I think, down 7 at the half, and I told the guys at halftime, I said, geez, we're lucky to be where we are right now. It could be a lot worse. And it did get worse in the second half. And then all of a sudden, at the middle of the second half, we started to feel a little turn in the thing and started to make some plays. And went on a pretty good run there at the end and caught them and took the lead. And then they took it back and tied it. And, of course, that put us into the overtime.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, I'm biased because I love a good game, and sometimes a good game deserves a few extra minutes, and we got that with your game going an extra 5. But is there almost a point of, gosh, I don't know how much more we can take of this?
Yeah, there was for me anyway. I'll tell you, we had a 4-point lead late in the game, and their kids came down and made a couple of great plays. They have a great point guard who knocked in a deep 3 ball to tie the ball game. We got the last shot of the regular time, and Kyle Schley, our All-American candidate, came up a little short, and so, you know, we walked to the bench having squandered a 4-point lead late, and we're saying we worked our way to get back that deep, you know, from that deep as we did, and now we're going to go play 5 more minutes. But the kids, I never noticed any sort of downturn in their attitudes. I think they were ready to go play 5 more minutes, and that's exactly what they did.
Talk to us about the end of this game, which we'll show people in just a moment while you're discussing it. Whitworth at the line, leading by 2, having a chance to make it 3 with about 7 seconds on the clock. Your reaction when they missed it?
Well, I was a little bit shocked, honestly. The kid at the line is a freshman for them, and he's a really good shooter. If I understand correctly, he's from Australia, and he's done a really nice job for them. They have guys that can score at every position. They're really good, and we had no timeouts left, and as he came to the line, our kid Schley had fouled out, and we drew something up real quick. So when the ball came off the rim, absolutely everything that could go wrong did go wrong. We didn't do anything that we were supposed to do. We had about 2 or 3 parts to that darn thing, and none of it went according to plan until it finally hit Nolan Harvey's hands, and that was the only good thing that happened that entire sequence. And he took the matters under control, and he went in there and shot a jump shot in.
Just showed it again for those who are watching. I find it amazing. 1, that is not an easy look. 2, he had a guy in his face. 3, he and about the rest of the Whitworth squad were the only ones frozen in time when that shot went down. He was on his back on the floor as a result of the shot, not in celebration. The Whitworth players were literally frozen on the floor. It was the rest of your squad who finally realized what happened. But how wrenching was it when the officials, rightly so, just wanted to make sure that one got off the buzzer on time and went and reviewed it?
Well, you know, Dave, that's one of those deals in a coaching career. It's a moment frozen in time. I could hardly see him with all the bodies in the way, and the ball went up, and it looked like it took 2.5 hours for the ball to get to the hole. And then, of course, it was a zipper. It was nothing but net. And then there was just the shock of it setting in, and you're thinking to yourself, did that really just happen? Where am I? What planet am I on right now? And, of course, once we realized what had happened, the place went bananas. And as I went out onto the floor, the official said, hey, you got to get people off the floor here. We got to review this thing. Well, you know, that's like asking to stop a landslide or a tidal wave, you know. They were pouring out of the stands, and, you know, if you have that video, you can see it. It was just a very emotional and outstanding time for our program. And, you know, I'm thinking, well, give us a chance here. We had security on the floor, and they're trying to clear the floor, but, geez, give us a chance. And once we restored order, they went over to the monitor, as you know, and, gosh, I feel like I stood there for 3 days in the desert sun waiting for them to make a decision. And I felt good that he got it out of his hands, and he felt good. But we really didn't know until those guys made the signal over at the monitor. And, you know, then it was the whole place erupted again. So it was really one of those very coolest moments in time in a coaching career. I'll never forget it.
Of course, the big shot, showing it one more time, advances you guys to the second weekend. You've been there before. I have seen you there before. You guys made the trip up to John Carroll a few years ago and got to the Elite Eight game against Guilford before falling. This time around, your road trip will go through Stevens Point, where you got to face off against Whitewater first and foremost. I know you're just starting to break that all down. But, how do you see the travel shaping up for you guys?
Well, I think we're a work in progress right now. We're going to be really after that on Monday morning. We've had some preliminary discussions for the travel, but nothing's been solidified as of yet. And that's priority one, is making sure that we get up there in plenty of time. And we've been to Stevens Point before. We were in a Sweet 16 with them a couple of years back. And so we've been there, and we know the way, that's for sure. And we're really looking forward to it. The Stevens Point people are outstanding with what they do. They're the pros at hosting, and the people there from top to bottom and side to side are just great hosts. And Bob Selling, the coach there, I consider a good friend. So we're glad to be going back. You know, it's going to be a great adventure for our guys.
And, of course, Whitewater's on the horizon here, a team that's certainly playing good basketball as well. How do you think you match up?
No idea. All I know is that they have had a tremendous year. Everybody in America that follows D3 basketball knows that that's a great, great conference. There's been numerous national championships won out of that conference. Everybody knows about the Wisconsin State Schools. It's going to be a heck of a challenge. I mean, all you have to do is go back and look at your polls this year and the coaches' polls and seeing where they sit and where Stevens Point sit. And, you know, it's not going to be any secret. We're going to be up against it. It's going to be a tremendous challenge for us to go up there and try to play well. It's going to be tremendous.
Well, we're certainly looking forward to seeing how it all plays out and see how you guys match up against the Warhawks. Thrilling game against Whitworth. Certainly one that will go down in the annals of Division III basketball. Appreciate you coming on the show and talking with us. As always, we give our guests the final word. Any final thoughts you'd like to share with those who are tuning in?
Well, you know, Dave, it's that time of year where a lot of crazy things can and will happen, and I think we were certainly, we were right in the middle of that yesterday, and I think that is what Division III basketball is all about. You know, there's no telling what's going to happen from week to week. You hope to survive in advance, and that's what we've done. And we're glad to not be on spring break and on the beaches in Texas this week. We're glad to be traveling to Wisconsin.
It's a little weird that you'd rather go to a cold weather state, but I understand why you want to go to a cold weather state.
Well, maybe we can find a lake to visit at least while we're there and say we had some spring break. I don't know.
They're all frozen, Coach. I'm just warning you now. They're all frozen.
No doubt.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, Coach. I really appreciate it. Good luck, safe travels, and hopefully we're talking to you soon.
Thanks very much, Dave. I sure appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Take care. Terry Butterfield joining us here on the Hoopsville Hotline again in Texas, Dallas. 27-3 after a thrilling overtime victory against Whitworth. They will move on, and they are moving on to play Whitewater at Stevens Point. The other game in that one is Stevens Point versus Emory. That's two of your three men's flights. The other one is Dickinson out to Illinois Wesleyan. Got an email regarding Plattsburgh's. The person writes, I think Plattsburgh State is flying under the radar a bit. They're very athletic, quick, and can shoot. I think they have a legitimate shot to beat Amherst as well as Stockton or Morrisville. They lost to Stockton earlier this year by 3 at their place, but are now playing their best basketball of the year. Your thoughts? My thoughts are, I think you're right. I think they are flying under the radar, but Plattsburgh is also one of those teams you just don't know what you're going to get at this point in the season. Remember last year they faced Amherst in the second round of the NCAA tournament and lost by 17 at Amherst. So now you're asking this Plattsburgh squad to better that. Of course, Amherst blitzkrieg through a lot of teams except for North Central on its way to an NCAA tournament victory. Of course, this Plattsburgh squad, I should say championship, this Plattsburgh squad not that far removed from an 8-18 season. This is 2 years removed from that. I think Plattsburgh's got some skills. I think they can shoot it well, and they certainly are good inside, but that's nothing Amherst hasn't seen before. They've seen it in Plattsburgh last year. They've saw it in their NESCAC play. They've also seen it in other opponents. I don't think you're going to surprise Amherst and Coach Dave Hickson. I also think it's a tall order to win on the road at LaFranc Gymnasium. I like Plattsburgh as a team. The Eastern Connecticut score doesn't surprise me. I think that just Amherst may expose them. If they get past Amherst, I think they got a legitimate chance to make the championship. If Morrisville State knocks off Richard Stockton, they're going to be playing on a whole nother level than they were last year. Morrisville, remember, got to this stage and lost to St. Mary's last year. Richard Stockton certainly playing basketball very nicely right now with a big win over Cabrini. You just don't know what to make of them after that. So I think this has got an if Amherst can be beaten by Plattsburgh, I think it opens up a fascinating Elite Eight matchup to be sure. Speaking of Richard Stockton, we'll hear from them shortly. We're gonna take a very quick break, and then I'm just gonna go straight to it. We're gonna go straight to my interviews with Rod Wood from Mary Washington. I also talked to their point guard, Dom Mora, and then you'll hear Gordon Mann talk to Richard Stockton's Jerry Matthews about all of we've been talking about. So that's all coming up here on Hoopsville starting right now. If you've got questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us hoopsville at D3Hoops.com and on Facebook at Facebook.com/Hoopsville. We'll start with my interview at Randolph-Macon with Rod Wood from Mary Washington on their big win and moving on in the NCAA tournament.
I'm Dave McHugh for D3Hoops.com and Hoopsville. I'm here at Randolph-Macon where Mary Washington moves on to the Sweet 16 with a pretty commanding win against DeSales. They took the lead 8-6 at about 17:30 left in the first half, and after that it was all Eagles.
I was surprised. I was expecting it to go down to a last possession. We watched them play last night against Randolph-Macon, and going to overtime and playing such a difficult opponent last night may have taken something out of them. I don't want to take anything away from what we did, but we were really aggressive defensively, and once we gained control defensively, I think they were pretty shot from last night. I think that there was a residual effect from last night.
They came out with an interesting defensive setup, put their big guy on your point, kind of dared him to shoot. Of course, he hits 2 threes right off the bat. Were you a little surprised with that scheme?
Yeah, I was. I went, oh, wow. Yeah, I was. And Dom knocked down a few shots, and then if that's what you're doing and it doesn't work right off the bat, you have to go to plan B, and to go to plan B that early sometimes is difficult on kids to adjust real quick. But Don did a great job of knocking down shots, and what I told him is if you don't knock down shots, it really doesn't matter. We'll spread the court and let you beat him off the dribble. Yeah. So, we had 2 options here. We just didn't have to go to option 2 until later on in the game.
Sure. A real physical game inside. Refs seem to allow almost a wrestling match inside. How much did that almost maybe play into your favor, because you guys are a really aggressive defensive team?
I don't know if it was to our advantage with our size, but we've got a scrappy bunch. I was surprised that they allowed so much to go on, to be honest with you. But it allowed the ball to get loose quite a bit because of how physical it was, and we're typically quicker to the ball because of our size. So I think that definitely helped us.
You guys took a bit of a slip there in February where you lost 3 in a row, Salisbury, Christopher Newport, others. You guys kind of seemed to right the ship, but at that point it almost seemed like you kind of went under the radar a little bit, especially in the Mid-Atlantic region. Was that maybe a blessing in disguise for you guys?
Our conference was so good this year. I didn't look at it, and I told the kids, I didn't look at that as a negative point of the season. I mean, we had a Christopher Newport team that I thought should have been ranked all year long. That's what I thought. You had Salisbury, who was playing the best probably in our conference at that time. So that loss I didn't think was a real bad one. And Wesley was one of the top 10 teams in the country. Yeah. So those 3 losses, it gave us a chance, I think, to reevaluate how hard we work. Not that we weren't working hard, but I think what it did was it drove the point home to the guys that we have to come ready to play, and we have to play as close to our potential every night to be successful. And if not, the more talented teams individually are going to beat us. Our strength is our collective team. Yeah. I mean, some of our parts are better than the individual parts. Yeah. That's the way that I see it. So when you look at us, it's one of those things where it's almost like a giggle. This is really? This is your starting lineup. This is what you do. That's what we do. For me, it's pretty easy, though. I don't have to worry about plan B. That's what we got. Yeah. That's what we got. We're not going to change. We're not going to go with our big lineup now. We're not going to try to, it's what we do.
It's been a long time since Mary Washington has been in the conversation at this point in the season. The program has always been, on the cusp of getting back to its former glory, as it were. How great is it for you as a coach to see the team kind of come back, the program come back to this point, and really be in the conversation now as one of the last 16 teams in the country?
Well, we've never been at this spot, so this is all new to us. When we first got there, I thought that, oh, wow, we've got this thing licked, and now we know the formula for it. But the fact of the matter is, at our school, that formula is very difficult. We don't have control over who gets in. Admissions does. We're very, very competitive academically. It doesn't reach the demographics typically that you're going to see in basketball. And financial aid, I don't have control over that. So we start out a little bit cheaper than the rest, and we end up more expensive in the rest. So that's difficult. But my former coach, Hal Nunley, I was explaining to him the troubles that we had, and he said, son, it's easy to get there one time. What you now have to do is establish a program that wins year in and year out. And so we've been doing that. I mean, if you look at our records the past 10, 12 years, we've only had one losing record. So I was really trying to establish that we're going to have a winning record every year. Then you get a couple of the right guys, and you can do some magical things. And this year, anytime you have a senior-laden team and they don't want to lose, they don't want to play their last game, some magical things can happen, and that's what's happening right now.
You bring up Hal Nunley's name, obviously revered here at Randolph-Macon and revered in the region. I mean, what does it mean to also maybe win on this court?
It's really a special place in my heart. I came here, when I saw the brackets come out, I was hoping to get a first-round home game. Sure. And then when I saw Randolph-Macon was the host, I went, that's where we're going. And the only thing I said, please, don't play them the first round. Let me meet them in a championship, because I want us to win and I want them to win all the time. And then they didn't win last night, and I was like, I want to take this torch forward, not just for Mary Washington, but for Coach Nunley. He's with me all the time because he's my mentor, and he's the only one that I got anything from. I mean, I wasn't an assistant coach anywhere. I just became a head coach. So he was the one. I was using his stuff, and I still do.
I got a tweet during our Hoopsville shows earlier in the week saying, when can a coach be something like 25-6 and not brag about going to the NCAA tournament to his roommate? Well, when his roommate happens to be a guy who played in the semifinals and the Final Four at Division I last year. Tell everybody a little bit about that.
Greg Marshall and I played together here, and we're very close. And we talk not as often as I'd like, but he'll probably shoot me with a text tonight saying congratulations. But, he's the talk of the town. And I'm living vicariously on the Division I level through him. I get to as many games as I can. He came to the East Coast last year and played VCU. I went down there, sat behind the bench. When he went to the NIT and won that, I was up in his. It's great. I'm having a special year, and he's having. It's not special. It may be something that has never happened. He wins the next game and wins one tournament game. He will do something that nobody else has ever done, which is 35-0 start.
Yeah.
So it's phenomenal for me. Every day I go home. Tomorrow, my off day, I'm gonna be hyped up watching the Missouri Valley Conference Championship with him, rooting for that. And I'm not a mild-mannered guy. I'm yelling at the TV. Again, it's a lot of fun for me.
Back to your team. You guys will take on Virginia Wesleyan in the next round. Site to be officially determined later, at least after we've talked. It might be determined by the time this airs on Hoopsville. Have you even looked at Virginia Wesleyan? They're kind of a similar team in nature with you guys.
They've been there and done that.
Yeah.
They have experience, they have talent, they have depth, they're well coached. We'll go back to the old drawing board, but the fact of the matter is, we're going to do what we do, and I hope that it's good enough. The one thing that I don't worry about, and probably Coach Macedo feels the same way, my kids are going to be ready to play. Mm-hmm. And if we lose, that will be the end of that, but it won't be because we didn't leave everything out there. I'm not ready.
Yeah.
I'm not ready. So, and I don't think these guys are. So I think that will be a great matchup,
Well, congratulations on the big win over DeSales. Congratulations on making the Sweet 16, and good luck next weekend.
Thanks, Dave.
Absolutely.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at d3hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Every season starts with hope and a dream to play for the ultimate title, to become NCAA national champions. And you can experience it live at the 2014 NCAA Division III Men's Basketball Championship, March 21st and 22nd in Salem, Virginia, hosted by the Old Dominion Athletic Conference and the City of Salem. Affordable tickets now available. Visit ncaa.com/tickets today and make a date with champions.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built.
I'm Dave McHugh for D3Hoops.com and Hoopsville, joined by senior guard Dom Mora from Mary Washington after the Eagles get a dominating win over DeSales in the second round of the NCAA tournament. Just as a senior who hadn't even really gotten a great chance to even be in the tournament, what's it mean to be moving on to the second weekend?
It's an incredible feeling for us and the guys and our coaching staff. We believed that we could do it all season, and it's just coming true. So it's an awesome feeling right now.
They came out and they had the big guy on you on defense. The tall kind of changed things up a little. What was your first reaction when you saw that matchup?
You know what? I just I took a step back and I just had to analyze the court and see what the best way to attack it was, because it was a new situation for me. And I was actually joking with some of the guys. Putting that big guy on me, it made me put a little extra oomph under my shot to get it over him, and that might have been it. But once I hit the first one, the second one was a little bit of a heat check, and then it was going in after that. So.
Started 4 for 5 from the floor, 4 for 4 from deep, 12 points, and finished with 16. After that, it certainly was more managing the game and getting your teammates involved. What was the secret you guys had tonight to trying to get past DeSales and get past them relatively easily after the first 5-6 minutes of the game?
Right. Well, we watched some of their game yesterday and some tape, and we know they had a couple guys. I think that 2 people in the high 20s last night. So we knew they had some goers, some scores. And we came out and we jumped on them a little bit early, and like you said, once I got going, the rest was up to my teammates. I got a tremendous amount of faith in them. I mean, they've shot the ball well all year with, Reister, Taylor, and Dylan, and the guys. Ace is stepping up off the bench as a freshman, and that's the fun part for me, just being able to drive and kick to these guys and making me look good. So I appreciate that from them.
You guys are an aggressive defensive team. The refs allowed a really physical game. Did that kind of play into your guys' hands, do you think? Or maybe was it almost too much?
Well, we like to play aggressive defense. Our coach, after that 3-game skid that we unfortunately encountered, he gathered us and he said, you know what? We got to go back to October 14th when the season started, and we went back to basics. And we said, we're going to be the aggressors. We're going to attack the teams. And, throughout the game, different refs call it different ways. So sometimes you got to adjust. But, if they come out and hit us in the mouth, we're going to come back and hit back. And, that's our theory right now. I guess it's a little, we adopted the play angry thing from Coach's longtime friend, Greg Marshall. So whatever it is, we're back on our high horse, and it feels good.
First time in program history moving on to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. The buzz on campus might be a little bit muted considering spring break is in full force. Is this something where you're going to start calling your friends, tweeting your friends, messaging them, going, hey, you got to cut this break short?
Hey, we're going to try everything we can to tell everyone to come out. Hopefully we can get that host on Friday. So if we can do that, I think we can have a pretty powerful crowd there.
When the season began, Mary Washington really wasn't on a lot of people's radars. The CAC looked tough, especially with Christopher Newport entering. You guys came roaring out of the gate, played really well, and have kept that up. Was it a change in mentality at some point in the season to realize you were as good as it seemed to be?
We rely heavily on our seniors, and I guess a couple games in, we realized, hey, we can do this. We're the real deal right now, and. So after we gained a little bit of momentum and confidence, we just played off it, and we do have one heck of a conference with the Wesley, the St. Mary's, who's been there and done that, the Christopher Newport that enters it, and getting some of those big wins over some named teams boosted our confidence a lot.
How long do you guys get to enjoy this, do you think, before it's back to getting down to business?
We'll have this night. Once we get back to, Mary Washington, our coaches will already have our scouting reports and our game plan. So we're going to rest our bodies, physical games these past 2 days. So we're going to take care of that and then get right down to business.
Very good. Well, congratulations on the win. Once again, Mary Washington with a commanding win over DeSales to move on to the second round of the NCAA tournament. He's Dom Mora. I'm Dave McHugh for D3Hoops.com in Hoopsville.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Every season starts with hope and a dream to play for the ultimate title, to become NCAA national champions. And you can experience it live at the 2014 NCAA Division III Men's Basketball Championship, March 21st and 22nd in Salem, Virginia, hosted by the Old Dominion Athletic Conference and the City of Salem. Affordable tickets now available. Visit ncaa.com/tickets today and make a date with champions.
Well, welcome. I'm Gordon Mann here from D3Hoops.com. We're standing in an exercise room. That's why you've got the exercise bikes here, and I'm here with Coach Jerry Matthews of Richard Stockton. And Coach, I'm going to start by saying we had Cabrini College coming out of this bracket. Tell us what we got wrong.
Well, you were our motivation.
Oh, well, there you go. You're welcome.
Everybody was telling me at the beginning of the week, we're not supposed to win. And nobody was even sure whether we could beat Bowdoin.
Right.
And the kids have been playing their buns off. We always put on the board, the team that plays the hardest usually wins. And make sure we're the team that plays the hardest.
Right.
And we did that in the league championship game. And then we've just been trying that. Bowdoin was one set of problems with the size.
Right.
These guys are a different set of problems. But if there's one thing that kids have shown over the whole year, it's that they do play with heart.
Right.
And heart and determination.
Tell me about your week. You win the conference tournament, close game, and then you're waiting at home. And I'm guessing were you thinking you were going to host? Were you not sure? Did you even care? And what did you think when you found out?
Well, you'd like to, but I can't say that. Cabrini's been very successful the last 3 to 4 years.
Right.
That I'm not surprised that they gave them the tournament because they put in to host.
Right.
And how can you argue with it? You go where they tell you to go. And, we've put in again now for like next week, so maybe we have a shot after this, because somebody's always going to have a home game.
Right.
And we had said of our 4 losses, 3 were on the road. So that you may have to continue to play on the road.
Right.
But then again, just play as hard as we've been playing, and we'll do all right.
You come out tonight. They play a 2-3 zone. They play zone most of the years, but you ran and you continue to run the same kind of set play. Take me through that play. You've got a guy who flashes to the middle, 2 on the wing. You're the coach, so take it from there.
There's like 5 or 6 different little things that you do.
Okay.
But you try to change the guy in the middle, or let him come from behind people so that they don't know where he is. They lose track of him. Like when we play Kane in our league and we put a guy on the foul line, they match up with us.
Right.
And then we have nowhere else to throw the ball. So we started working on changing the guy, stepping out, replace him with somebody else, run a few screens for the people on the wings, and try and get pretty good percentage shots. But one of the things we had said going into tonight was, don't keep settling for threes.
Well,
go to the basket. And
Where are you going, stay the weekend?
He's
Coach Bittner?
Yeah.
That's
We're
fine.
on screen.
Oh, my bad.
That's all right.
Sorry.
I lost my train of thought.
It's okay. We're talking about playing against the zone defense.
It's comedy being around us.
Like I had said when we were doing this before, I thought we were very patient. We didn't want to play in the game in the 90s. We didn't even want to get the game into the 80s.
Right.
And like when you talk about the length of possessions for the football teams, like in a half, I thought that if you added up the time we had the ball in the first half, I'd be surprised if it wasn't 14 or 15 minutes.
Right.
Because they would come down, shoot quickly,
Right.
but then let us go down, try and take our time, get what we wanted, stay out of foul trouble, and just take a high percentage shot. We felt that we would get one if we just waited long enough, because I feel like we have 3 or 4 guys who are pretty good shooters.
Right. Yep.
And Namby's done a phenomenal job inside. He's like 6'3.5", no more than 6'4".
Plays much bigger.
Right, he's done a great job as our big guy. And then Anthony Woodard comes in, and he's not as disciplined as Namby, but he jumps more, he blocks a shot here and there. So we feel like we got a nice rotation going with the people that play. But I will say this too, Kevin Johnson has come alive in the last 2.5 weeks, which is something we've been waiting for all season.
Well, he hit that big shot against, I don't remember if it was Kane or who it was in the semifinals in the final few seconds to get you guys into the finals.
He went the length of the floor in about 5 seconds for a layup to put us up 1, and that was the final score.
Yeah.
And, he's just into it. We laughed today at 9 in the morning. Kevin Johnson sent out a motivational text to everybody. We were stunned.
Can you repeat it, or is it not for family consumption? Huh?
No, it was good.
Okay.
It was good. But we were stunned that he would actually do this.
Right.
We've been trying to get him to do things like this all year.
This was a very well-coached team. They were disciplined. Even at the end of the game, fast break, you're up 7, would have been very easy for Emil Johns, who had the ball, to just take it to the rim. He pulls it back, they get the foul, you run a few more seconds. And there wasn't even a hesitation. He just did it automatically. Has this team been easy to coach or more coachable in comparison to prior teams, or am I just seeing the finished product here?
Let's put it this way. Everybody has had a few bad moments here, and everybody has had a few very good moments here and there. And, I told you about the conversation with Kevin. I had to have one with Ramil after one of our next to the last week of the regular season, and he knew where I was coming from, and he's been great since then, because he realized the same thing. He's playing till the end now. This is his last organized games and that, so that the beer league's the next.
Well, he came in and joined us briefly for the interview, and he is very active on the bench. Tell me about your relationship with Coach Bittner.
It's evolved pretty good over the last 8 years. I used to be the guy doing the running and screaming on the sideline.
That's what I remember, yes.
Right now, my right knee, if I stand up quickly, I'm never sure if it's going to give way or not.
Okay.
And the last thing I want to do is fall on my buns on the sideline and be a spectacle.
Right.
So it's given him an opportunity to do more coaching.
Right.
I sit there a little bit more quietly. If I want something specifically done, I may say it to him.
Right.
But we've got, just like with the kids in a rotation, we've got kind of a nice rotation on the coaching staff right now.
Well, last question for you. The last time you and I talked, you had beaten William Patterson in a 4-overtime game at your place, and I said, how are you going to celebrate? And you said, I'm going to take my grandkids out for ice cream. It's pretty late. I don't know if ice cream places are still open, so how do you celebrate this one?
Well, I can tell you how I celebrated the NJAC win last week.
Sure.
I took 4 of them on Sunday, and what's the kid's picture that's out? Oh, we went and saw the Lego picture.
Okay.
That was
What's your reveal
on Sunday. The kids liked it. I wasn't that fond.
Okay.
And no, you know what tomorrow will be? I'm going to Barnes & Noble to look for books.
Well, I don't know if you'll get to read them at home or on the road, but next week. But if you got a bus ride, maybe you'll have something to read.
No, I'll gladly put off reading if we can keep going for 2 more weeks. But we're going for one more. The kids were supposed to go on spring break this weekend, and right now those 14 guys can't go on spring break, but they're delighted to be here.
Spring break Pomona this year for Richard Stockton. Congratulations, Coach.
Thank you.
Every season starts with hope and a dream to play for the ultimate title, to become NCAA national champions. And you can experience it live at the 2014 NCAA Division III Men's Basketball Championship, March 21st and 22nd in Salem, Virginia, hosted by the Old Dominion Athletic Conference and the City of Salem. Affordable tickets now available. Visit ncaa.com/tickets today and make a date with champions.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody, live. Thanks to Rod Wood, Don Mora and Gordon Mann, of course, with Jerry Matthews on those interviews from Mary Washington and Richard Stockton. Hope you enjoyed them. If you got any questions for us as we are in overtime for a few more minutes or a little bit of time, tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. You can also join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Hoopsville, and of course on email as well, Hoopsville at D3Hoops.com. Speaking of Gordon Mann, the aforementioned guy, I'm hoping I'm not losing my broadcast here as our computer just took a little hit. So we're going to talk this through before Gordon comes back. I want to make sure everything's working first. It's always fun. Here we go. I think we're still on the air. Hope we're still on the air. We'll double check that real quick. Come on. Yeah, looks like we're still on the air. So, the aforementioned Gordon Mann joins us on the Hoopsville Hotline, presented by the City of Salem, host of the Division III Men's Basketball Championship Tournament. And Gordon, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Dave. Good to talk with you.
Absolutely. Been way too long, if you ask me. Crazy weekend in both tournaments. Of course, you were on the site of one of the craziness. Richard Stockton win over Cabrini. You got a chance to talk to the great Jerry Matthews, who's always a blast to chat with. Your take on what happened there, your take on how Stockton beat Cabrini and why?
I think for starters, I was really impressed with the way Stockton played in terms of just being very disciplined. They ran a very slow, low tempo game. I think you heard Matthews in the interview. I think at one point, either in the press conference or in the interview, he said, we didn't want the game to be in the 90s. We didn't want it to be in the 80s.
Yeah.
And his players were very disciplined about that. They would break out on a fast break, and instead of trying to go to the rim and accelerating the pace and starting to play into Cabrini's hands, their guards, particularly Ramil and Kevin Johnson, would pull it out, would set up the offense, and they were very deliberate. Cabrini showed a 2-3 zone as they have most of the season. Didn't press much. Coach Matthews said that kind of surprised him a little bit in the press conference, and it was a case where the Ospreys knew what was coming, and they played kind of a deliberate, thoughtful way against it, and that was a big part of it. The other part of it was Cabrini just didn't shoot well in the second half. They were 1 of 12 from behind the arc. They do take a lot of threes as a team, so the 12 attempts is not unusual. They just didn't fall. Fran Rafferty, who had a great career at Cabrini and was a 47% free throw three-point shooter, I think missed 5 or 6 or 7 in the second half. I don't know if he made one the whole second half. And Vinny Walls, who had been very hot for them, had been their leading scorer over the last 4, 6, 7 games. Not Walton Moss. Just couldn't get a shot to drop in the second half, and you could see as Cabrini continued to fire up threes and not make them, and Richard Stockton would come back down. They'd run their offense. They'd take their time. They'd get it down low, and they'd make 5, 6, 7 footers. You could just see the body language from Cabrini was not good, and the body language for Richard Stockton was very good down the stretch, and the score reflected that.
It's amazing. Rafferty is graduating, and they still have Walton Moss coming back, and they've got some other keys there. Is this maybe one of those gut-wrenching type defeats for Cabrini? I mean, I know their coach said, "Hey, it doesn't change the program," but this is a gut check, I think, for a program that certainly had extremely high expectations this season.
Yeah, I think it was disappointing for a lot of people. Just the atmosphere around the building after the gym was kind of the quiet that comes with a loss that wasn't expected. I heard a lot of people saying, kind of mumbling on their way out of the gym that they didn't see that coming. Disappointing because when you get as high as 2 in the country and when you stay in the top 10, there are expectations, and Cabrini's built those expectations by the virtue of playing very well in the tournament. This is their earliest exit since 2010 or 2009 when they got obliterated by Randolph-Macon, and we're kind of just happy to be there because they hadn't been at the NCAA tournament in a while. Corey Lemons at that point was either a freshman or a sophomore. This team with Walls and with Walton Moss, and with Rafferty and John Miller, who have been there for a long time and have made some deep runs. I think the folks around the program were at least expecting to get to the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight. I think if they had lost to Amherst, that had been one thing, but losing at home, which they have done very little of, they've lost just 2 home games in the last 5 years, and losing to a team that was ranked but not real highly ranked, I think was a bit of a stomach punch for everybody there.
Talking to Gordon Mann, Deputy Managing Editor for D3Hoops.com, and he was at Cabrini for their run, as it were. From your take, you lose Fran Rafferty. How much will that change this Cavaliers squad for the future?
It changes them, but the guy who they lose, the guy whose loss hurts them even more is John Miller.
Yeah.
Rafferty's a real good, for most of his career, second, and then down the stretch here, third option to Walls and Moss. Miller is really their only legitimate low-post player, and Matthews commented on that in the press conference. He said, once Miller went out with foul trouble, and John picked up his 4th foul with 16 minutes to play in the second half, he said once that happened, they didn't have any size, and neither did we, was his comment. And Nnamdi Usua is their best low-post player, and Anthony Woodward. They're both 6'5", 6'6", but play a little taller than that. Cabrini's next forward off the bench is Brent Mahoney, who's a 6'4" freshman, and Brad Fagan, who's a 6'4" freshman. And those guys are, they are wing players, basically, but they're not low-post players. Mahoney, I think, will develop into a good low-post player. Fagan could, too, but he's got to put on a little bit of bulk. He's kind of thin. But the loss of Miller will hurt. And, the other question is, for injuries, or do you get a full season out of Walton Moss and Walls? Now, Walton Moss was certainly healthy. Walls joined mid-season. If you get a full season out of them with the conference they're in, they're going to win 18, 19, 20, 21 games without blinking. The question of whether they can make a tournament run or not sort of depends. And, Coach Kahn has done a real good job, both with freshmen and with transfers. Vinny Walls is not someone anyone had heard of 6 weeks ago. Brent Mahoney and Brad Fagan and Brennan McKinn, who's their real good freshman point guard, were all in high school at this time last year. So he's done a real good job building that program back. The thing you'd like to do, you'd like to get one more deep run in the tournament with Walton Moss, because Walton Moss is just a special, once-in-a-program talent.
Yeah.
And Matthews last night in the press conference, because most of the press there was kind of Cabrini-oriented, he was asked about Walton Moss, and he said that Walton Moss was, the best player he's seen in Division III, and no one followed up with, did he mean this year or did he mean ever? But he said he's the best player we've seen in Division III, and he told his guys, let him shoot 16, 17-footers all night, most of which Walton Moss made. He said, just don't let him do that crossover thing to you and knock you on your, fill in the blank.
Keister.
Yeah, and then turned to Josh Blayman and said, hey, just like he did to you in the first half.
Oh.
So Matthews is likes to tease people a little bit, but his comment there tells you Walton Moss is a special talent, and 2 years from now, when Mahoney and McCann and these other guys are juniors, and there's somebody else who's become the new kind of alpha dog for them, maybe it's even one of those three, you're just not going to have a player like Walton Moss again. It's just not likely to happen again. So he's one of those lightning in a bottle for however many years you got him, and you kind of got to ride him as long as you can. And once that period is passed, Cabrini will still be a very good and maybe continue to be an excellent program, but just players like that just don't come around very often.
I'm talking with Gordon Mann. Cabrini losing to Richard Stockton. Richard Stockton will move on to play Morrisville State, those games at Amherst. Let me switch you to the women, sir, because I know that will be your focus from here on out. Because obviously you'll be heading off to Stevens Point for the Final Four for D3Hoops.com's coverage. I think you and I have been to Final Four twice, once on the women's side thanks to the men's system last year, and once on the men's side a few years before that. So we don't get to see each other as much as we converse. It's kind of interesting. And by the way, we're only like an hour and a half from each other. That's the funnier part. Women's side, you kind of had some craziness, and you got some status quo, as it were. Upper left, you've got FDU Florham. They'll take on Baldwin Wallace. Maybe a little surprising that this is the team that got out of the first weekend while everybody else couldn't. I thought York was going to win that game. Of course, Montclair State will take on Scranton. I don't think any big surprises there. I even called Vassar beating Williams in that one. That all at Madison. And this is a fascinating bracket because you got a couple of teams who have been powers for a while. You got Scranton, who's kind of coming back to its former glory, and you got Baldwin Wallace, who just is one of those teams that you just don't know about.
Yeah. I think heading into the weekend in my in the preview I wrote, I picked Montclair State, but based on this weekend's results, I think Baldwin Wallace might go in as the favorite here. The Yellow Jackets are unknown for two reasons. One, they were sort of part of a mix of teams in the OAC with John Carroll and Ohio Northern and Capital at the end of the year, where it was, unless you were following that conference very closely or affiliated with one of the schools, just kind of hard to keep them all straight because they would play each other so often and beat each other so often, and they all sort of merged together in your head. They're all kind of built somewhat similarly in terms of their roster sizes, good power forward, serviceable guards, a little more depth up front. So that was the one thing for them. The second thing for them is the fact that as a program, they weren't allowed to participate in the conference tournament last year. And so they didn't get that head of steam coming into the preseason where you play in your conference tournament, you win a couple games, maybe you even get in the NCAAs, and you're on everybody's radar. They were sort of in self-imposed exile for a year. But the one thing they have that none of the other three teams have in this bracket is they've had to play tough conference games night in and night out for 7 to 8 weeks now. And even the teams I didn't mention, Wilmington is well coached, Mount Union is well coached, Otterbein was in the tournament last year, and you can't say that about the Freedom Conference, you can't say that about the Landmark Conference, and you can't say that about the NJAC. And this time of year, you saw Montclair bend a little bit against Cabrini and had to rally from being down 19. The FDU Florham has still not yet ever been challenged, unless you want to count a midway through the second half deficit to Delaware Valley in the conference tournament. And Baldwin Wallace has. Baldwin Wallace knows what those battles are like. So if they're in a close game on Friday night, they've got the pedigree to maybe take that. At the same time, Florham will have the crowd behind them at home, and they're a very exciting team, an excitable team, a lot of energy. And if they get out to a fast start, they're hard to catch because just in terms of their athleticism and their energetic play.
Of course, I'll just put you on the spot. Who do you think comes out of this one to get to Stevens Point?
Well, I picked Montclair State in the bracket. I guess I'll stick with the Red Hawks. I think Baldwin. I guess my picks aren't that old, so I guess I'll stick with Montclair State. Although I'm again impressed with the way Baldwin Wallace has played.
Lower left, Tufts will be the host. They'll take on Castleton State, who certainly shook things up a little bit, beating Bowdoin in the first round at home, then beating Plattsburgh State to advance. And then the other side will be Ithaca versus Amherst. Really nothing shocking, I think, in those, except Hartwick winning in overtime against Baruch. Certainly a big win there for Hartwick. How do you see this pod?
This is a tough year. And the whole bracket, the way the bracket is shaken out, you look at the first round and the second round matchup, they're not going to have to play Bowdoin again. No disrespect to Castleton State, but, at some point I think the ride ends for them. If Tufts gets into the Elite Eight, it's probably Amherst who's waiting for them, although Ithaca is a very gritty, tough team. Amherst, they've beaten them twice this year, and even when it looked on Saturday evening like maybe Tufts was going to lose to a very good University of New England team, down 2 with 30 seconds to play in regulation, they find a way to tie it. Tied with University of New England having the ball in the final 20 seconds, and they get the ball back and hit a desperation three, and you just get the sense that, whether you believe in fate or just the right pieces coming together, you just get the sense that this is Tufts' turn to go to the Final Four.
In the upper right, Oshkosh versus Whitewater. Carthage versus DePaul, all played at DePaul in Greencastle, Indiana. Talked to Whitewater's coach earlier. If they get past Oshkosh, it's some kind of rematch, no matter what. How do you shape this one out?
Yeah, well, it's I would say, I'm still going with DePaul. I had picked DePaul to win the whole tournament. I have them number one on my ballot. I think the fact that they get this at home makes a huge difference. I think. Gun in my head, if you would have forced me to pick between Carthage and Hope, I would have picked Carthage because they were at home.
Yeah,
I think the same thing here.
Yeah.
Carthage, we saw them at the D3 Hoops Classic. They're well put together. I said to Pat, when we were out there that team was put together for a championship run. They just have all the right ingredients. I just think playing at DePaul on Friday night, I just think that's probably too tall an order. And DePaul against. I really don't know what to make of the two, or who to pick from the two Wisconsin schools. But I think DePaul wins what's probably the toughest bracket. Well, not probably. I think definitely the toughest bracket in the tournament. I think DePaul comes out of it just by virtue of experience and home court advantage.
And then the lower right, you get Texas. You got the flying bracket. No matter how this was going to happen, it was going to be a flying bracket. I think a lot of people thought Christopher Newport could get to Thomas More by bus. They can't. By definition, it's 537 miles between Christopher Newport and Thomas More. If that had been a bus trip, then Thomas More probably would have been the host. Instead, everybody's flying, so let's fly him somewhere. And I love the fact it's going to Whitman. Before I get your take on the pod, what is your take on everybody going to Walla Walla?
Yeah, I was surprised and impressed that the committee was. I think you're right. The fact that nobody could drive anywhere, took that out of the equation and allowed Whitman to host. They definitely deserve it. Northwest Conference schools have been real strong in the past and haven't had hosting rights. George Fox would for a couple of years, including when they won the title. Lewis and Clark, Puget Sound have all had pretty good teams over the years, and it's nice and it's expensive. I can tell you because I was thinking about trying to fly out there to see those games. And there aren't a lot of direct flights from wherever you live to Walla Walla, Washington. If you're flying to Spokane, it's a 2 or 3 hour drive. If you're flying to Seattle or Portland, it's a 4 or 5 hour drive. So it's an expensive trip.
Yeah.
But Whitman doesn't have to worry about that. It's not their dollars. They shouldn't have to worry about it. And I think that makes the pot a little more evenly matched. But I just can't see anybody slowing down with Thomas More right now. I mean, they've been not just beating teams, but blasting them to smithereens. And Christopher Newport and Thomas More are both going to probably be a little travel lagged, so that negates whatever advantage Christopher Newport might have had. And then I would expect Whitman to beat Texas Tyler, although I'm impressed with how Texas Tyler has played. And then Whitman against Thomas More, that will be a great game if it gets to it. Those are the types of games that teams that have won championships have had to win on the road. When George Fox won at Thomas More against Hope, when Wilmington won on the road against whoever it was they played, I think it was Puget Sound that one year. That's a gut check for Thomas More. But again, right now, when you've got that one special player and a lot of other really good players around her, I'm not sure it matters where they play that game. I think Thomas More will win.
Yeah, it's fascinating how amazing that team is, especially Sidney Moss. So you think Thomas More is coming out to take on DePaul, and you think it's Montclair State against Tufts in the other semi?
Yeah, it's not too often I still have all four of my picks after the first weekend for the Final Four, so I guess I'll stick with them. The Whitman, I think that gym, that environment on Saturday night, really provided the home teams playing in all four of those games. The gyms should be pretty good, but I think the Whitman crowd will be especially jacked up for that game. And they have very talented players, Sarah Anderegg and Heather Johns. They have a real good roster. They've had a great season. I just think at some point when you play essentially a Division I All-Star player with a lot around her, I just, unless something's changed from what I saw of Whitman last year, they don't have the size to match up with that, and there really aren't very many teams in the country that do.
Gordon Mann joining us here. Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see how this all plays out. I think Thomas Moore's got the opportunity. Man, what they did to John Carroll is just amazing. I think that I think that stood out to me more. They've had that score, but not against a quality team necessarily, as they got it there with John Carroll. Texas Tyler getting a big win over Rhodes certainly jumped out at me as well. Are you surprised by how many teams on the men and women's side beat the home team? I mean, you get it all the time, but we had a lot of hosts lose in the first weekend this year.
I really was, particularly on the men's side more than the women's side. The women's side, I think the teams that were strong and hosted, for the most part, won. With the exception of I don't know, Bowdoin. Maybe you want to put them out there. The other teams that hosted were good teams, but were pretty evenly matched. So Rhodes against Texas Tyler, Ferrum against Christopher Newport. Hartwick was basically hosting because of a miscommunication between the two selection committees,
the liaisons, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I in an even matchup, you would think home court would be the could be the deciding factor, particularly for teams that are traveling a long distance and often at this time of year to unfamiliar places. So I have been surprised by that. I thought on the women's side, this is one of the more open-ended years in terms of teams that could win the tournament. I thought there were probably 6 or 7 who had a reasonable shot to win the tournament. Most of those teams are still around. But I thought the bracket was, on the women's side, again, not perfect, but well put together, at least in terms of having very even matchups. Kind of throughout the conference, where you didn't look at any team, with the possible exception of Tufts here, who's gotten a little bit of help with some upsets, and didn't say, well, that team doesn't really have, that team really will kind of coast into the Elite Eight or to the Sweet 16, and even University of New England certainly didn't allow that to be the case for Tufts.
Yeah, 8 men's teams were hosts, lost a lot of them in the first round. 6 women's teams as hosts lost. Again, Hartwick being maybe the exception to that scenario, as it were. Gordon, any other thoughts on both tournaments?
No, I think it was a fun first weekend. I thought the distribution of teams who won between conferences was nice. You saw some conferences on Friday night that had not won games in a while or ever, and some programs that had not won games ever get wins. So that's always nice. Haverford, Cabrini, Castleton, Florham, although they're not really at that same level as those programs anymore. All the Vassar, all those teams had never won an NCAA tournament game before. And seeing some of the teams that have come through from the OAC, from the ASC, from some of these other conferences, from the Freedom Conference, it's been nicely balanced. And I think with the exception of Hope, who you would have liked to have seen gotten a little better draw, play at home if it would have been possible, and still be in the tournament. Everybody else that I sort of thought had a shot to win a championship coming into this weekend is still around, and that's more or less what you want.
Well, hey, sir, I appreciate you coming on the show and chatting with us. I know you have not determined where you are headed as of yet, but we'll look forward to finding out where you're going on the women's side. Technically, I haven't even decided what I'm doing on the men's side as of yet, even if it is men. Good, safe travels nonetheless. It's either a short trip for you or a little bit longer. And obviously, Stevens Point ahead for you at the Quant. I know you're looking forward to that, sir.
I am. I've never been out there. One of the great programs in Division III basketball, and I always look forward to visiting them for the first time.
Well, Shirley will certainly welcome you with open arms. Take care of yourself. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Probably chat with you next week as well as we get ready for the Final Fours as well, my friend.
Sounds good. Take care, Dave.
Take care. Gordon Mann joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline, presented by the Division III Men's Championship Tournament weekend in Salem, Virginia. It's going to wrap up our show. A couple of quick thoughts before we sign off. Crazy weekend usually means another crazy weekend ahead. A lot more parity in men's and women's basketball allows for better games. That's just the long and the short of it, and better matchups. On the women's side, looking at that upper left, I agree with Gordon. That Baldwin-Wallace team is looking really dangerous. I think they can get past Florham. Montclair State is the question mark. They kind of got to this point last year and couldn't get past a tough Christopher Newport squad. Well, they're going to face a tough Scranton squad. I think that upper left is wide open as to who can come out of it. My team, who I had picked, is not available anymore, so I'm going to ride, why not? I'll ride the Baldwin Wallace train as far as I can take them. Lower left, it's Tufts, Castleton State, Ithaca, and Amherst, and I got to ride Tufts here. I know they had a tough win, no pun intended, against New England. New England, I think, finally showing as how good they really are in that one, and you saw the winner at the beginning of the show here for Tufts to get that victory in overtime. I like them here. They've beaten Amherst. Amherst is, I don't think, as good, and I think Tufts breaks up the Amherst streak of getting to the Final Four. Upper right, I agree with Gordon. This one is a dog of in a good way. It's a challenge. I kind of like DePaul coming out only because DePaul is playing well and they're the champs, and I don't see a reason not to like them. Carthage, big win at Hope, of course, or win over Hope. Of course, that was at home. I think DePaul has the advantage here, though I like how Carthage plays right now. Would not be surprised if they can pull this upset off. So I think it's DePaul versus Whitewater. The DePaul coming out with another chance at a national title. Thomas More and Texas Tyler, I think people don't appreciate just how good this Thomas More team is with Sidney Moss. I think Thomas More comes out of that. Christopher Newport and Whitman, nothing against the captains of CNU, but I think they're going to run into a team they've never seen before in Whitman. And then you've got a Whitman-Thomas More matchup that I think's a pick'em. And because I had Whitman to the Final Four, I'm gonna ride Whitman all the way in that one. On the men's side, quickly, that upper left, Emory versus Stevens Point, Texas Dallas versus Whitewater. I see a rematch in Stevens Point Whitewater, and I see Stevens Point moving on to the Final Four thanks to the home court advantage. Wheaton versus Dickinson, Calvin versus Illinois Wesleyan. Can't believe Calvin and Illinois Wesleyan have not played before in the history of their two programs. I'm going to take Illinois Wesleyan coming out of that one only because I think the Titans, I had the Titans losing to St. Norbert, as I said last show. It was a pick'em for me. It was a coin flip. I just kind of like the idea that maybe St. Norbert could pull it off. WashU's out of the way. I think Illinois Wesleyan rolls through here to play Wheaton, and then that is an outstanding game. But I think Illinois Wesleyan exacts some revenge, and I get to see my good friend Bob Quillman at Salem, Virginia, to follow his Titans into Salem once again. Upper right, Amherst versus Plattsburgh State, Stockton versus Morrisville State. I think the two states lose here. I think it's going to be an Amherst versus Richard Stockton battle. I think the last time these two teams faced off in the NCAA tournament was the first round, or Amherst was at Stockton in 2009 when Stockton made a run to the championship game. Can't remember if those two teams faced each other. If you can give me a second, I will try and call that up. Go to Richard Stockton here. Richard Stockton, 2009. They were 30-3 and did not play Amherst. So Amherst lost to Gwynedd Mercy in that tournament. If that memory serves, yeah, Gwynedd Mercy beat them in the first round. So don't know the last time Amherst and Richard Stockton ever played each other without doing way too much research live on the show here. But I'm going to take Amherst here. Richard Stockton's good, but I don't know if they have the amount of weapons that Amherst has. Though it'd be fun to see that. It'd be fun if the NJAC once again gets back to the Final Four, but it'd be ironic that it's only Stockton that has been able to pull it off. Or win games in the NCAA tournament. Mary Washington will host Albertus Magnus versus Williams. Fascinating matchup. We keep hearing that Albertus Magnus would like to play NESCAC teams, and that NESCAC teams don't want to play Albertus Magnus for whatever reason. I don't know if that is actually true. I don't know if it's rumor. I don't care. The fact is, Albertus Magnus does not play NESCAC teams for whatever reason. Now we've got a NESCAC battle. If Albertus Magnus wins that game, they finally make the point of who they are. And they finally put their foot down as if they're that good. If Williams wins this and wins it easily, it's not good for the Falcons. I don't think it hurts their argument for that they're that good a program in the Northeast. I think this is a major game for Albertus Magnus. If they lose, it's bad. If they win, they've arrived. I've got Williams to the Final Four. I can't pick against him, but man, I'm thinking about Albertus Magnus. But I got Williams to the Final Four. I can't pick against him. Mary Washington against Virginia Wesleyan. I think this is going to be a fascinating matchup. Two really good teams. Mary Washington's defense is outstanding. If the refs allow them to play as aggressively as they want to, Virginia Wesleyan is going to have some problems, especially on the perimeter where they like to shoot. But the team that's going to be good is the teams that the winner is going to be the one who has more success driving the lane and finding opportunities. Both teams like to do it. I'm not sure who's going to be able to pull it off. I'm going to take Mary Washington because it's at home. Though spring break will have just been wrapping up. I don't know if they're going to have the fan base. Virginia Wesleyan's not that far from home. It's about a 2-hour trip, so they're going to have a good fan base there. I'm leaning towards Mary Washington, but this is a pick 'em in my world. And just because I have Williams to the Final Four still on my bracket, I've got to ride Williams to the Final Four. But I am not confident Williams can actually get out of this. I think Williams, I know they're only one loss to any team besides Amherst this season. I just think they're going to run into some matchups here they are not used to playing against in Albertus Magnus, Mary Washington, and Virginia Wesleyan. So I got Williams only because that's who I've got in the Final Four. But I don't have that confidence that it's actually going to happen. That's going to do it for our show. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Well, that's going to do it from the show. Sorry, got a tweet from a good friend. It's something it's not worth going into right now. Just about NESCAC scheduling in the AMs and Albertus Magnus. It's a good thought, Frank. We'll get to that sometime. Not worth going inside politics on everybody here. We'll be back on the air Thursday. We'll talk to more teams who are in the NCAA tournament, probably more of the hosts who are involved. Maybe we'll even hear from our good friend Bob Quillman. Bob, if you're listening, I want you on the show, my friend. We will get some other people on as well as we get ready for the sectional rounds of the Division III Men's Basketball Championship Tournament and, of course, the Women's Basketball Championship Tournament as well. The road to Salem and Stevens Point is now a little bit shorter for all the teams involved. Big weekend coming up. Crazy weekend that we just got finished with. For more, go to d3hoops.com. Big mention, don't forget, the NABC coaching or NABC All-Star Game voting for the last couple of players to be on the roster will hit d3hoops.com tomorrow. You will get a chance to vote on a few of the last remaining guys to get into the game, the All-Star Game replacing the consolation game in Salem. Don't forget to vote. You'll be able to do that on d3hoops.com starting tomorrow. I want to say, let's see here. I'm double checking if there's a specific time for that announcement. Yep, starting at noon Eastern time tomorrow, you'll be able to vote for the NABC All-Star. I think we vote the last two in, or I think one for each side, or the last one in. I'm not 100% positive, but look for more information on d3hoops.com. That's going to do it for us. I want to thank all of our guests: Calvin's men's basketball coach Kevin Vandestreek, Christopher Newport's women's basketball coach Bill Broderick, Whitewater's women's basketball coach Carrie Carolla, Baldwin Wallace's women's basketball coach Sherry Harrer, men's basketball coach at Texas Dallas Terry Butterfield, and of course Rod Wood and Dom Mora from Mary Washington, and Jerry Matthews, who talked with Gordon Mann. I want to thank Gordon Mann for coming on the show as well. Also, by the way, I never do this enough, but thanks to all the SIDs who help us out securing interviews while it's on this air or at other locations. We certainly appreciate their support. That's going to do it for the show. Once again, thanks to d3hoops.com and the National Association of Basketball Coaches for their support as well of this show. While we're off the air, you can always tweet us and email us questions at d3hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us hoopsville at d3hoops.com or join us on Facebook at facebook.com/hoopsville. We'll be back on the Thursday at 7 o'clock. We'll announce our guests probably on Wednesday and Thursday, so you have an idea. Thanks again for tuning in, everybody. Have a great evening. Enjoy the week as we get ready for the big weekend of 16 teams on both sides vying for a chance to still be alive for an NCAA tournament berth. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by d3hoops.com and the National Association of Basketball Coaches. We'll see you back here on Thursday night.